What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 3 Chains. Chapter 51A Little Collecting Habit. Advertise here. The next day, after Li's extraordinary performance, last night, the meat storage on the Black Pearl was enough to last for a while. So today Tron needs to decide where to venture next. So, everyone gathered on the deck, but Timo still liked to stay at the observation deck, so he did not come down to join in the fun. Actually, if you look at the map, there are quite a few nice places. For example, the ancient island. Small garden, there seems to be a tribe of giants on it. Li actually thinks that Sigu Island is not bad. Li Jing touched his beard. Looking at the two people who had been discussing all morning, Sadako pursed her lips and said in a hollow voice, "How about asking Xiaohei? He will definitely know better than you." After speaking, Sadako held the boat elf Xiaohei in the palm of her hand. Lift. Xiaohei, Captain, I am a ship elf AI. Xiaohei raised his chin proudly and crossed his hands. His chubby little body looked particularly cute. Looking at Xiaohei, Tren pushed his forehead lightly with his finger. So Xiaohei, what do you think? Of course you can see it with your eyes. Don't make me use you to fish. Xiaohei, I used my eyes to see, okay. Captain. Xiaohei pouted, then flicked his hand, and suddenly, the holographic sea chart was displayed, coupled with Xiaohei's algorithmic ability like Alpha Dog. In the blink of an eye, you can figure out the routes of the next few people. The route just mentioned by Captain Tren and Li Jing is also a good choice, but in order that we don't have to worry about money next time, my guess is to go to Sky Island. Sky Island. Tren frowned slightly. That's right, Captain. Xiaohei smiled slightly. Does the captain want to worry about money during the adventure? In no mood. Or do you want to be like other protagonists and be stupid enough to calculate some money? In no mood. That's right. Do you want treasure? Then go to Sky Island. There is countless wealth there, and I will put it all there. Okay, let's start it together. No. Tren, who was trapped by the words, suddenly reacted and stared sideways at a certain elf. Hee, doesn't this fit the atmosphere? Go, Xiaohei, fight that fish monster. No, Captain. Tren flicked the fishing rod, fixed it, and sat back. Actually, Xiaohei is right. Sadako put away the fishing rod, and Xiaohei climbed out of the fish's belly. There are indeed a lot of treasures on Sky Island. Tren still knew about Sky Island, but counting the time, it should be the ruling point of Enel by now. But there is also a user with Logia's Devil Fruit ability. It's also the Thunder Fruit, Tisk. What a good thing. Devil Fruit. Timo was rappelling down from the observation deck at this time. He took out an apple-shaped fruit with a special pattern in his little basket, which he had picked up after the death of the Lion of Vilmu. I originally wanted to eat it during the vigil tonight, but the sun was a bit strong at noon today, so I planned to take it to the observation deck to quench my thirst. But after hearing Tren's words, I was a little curious and took the initiative to come over. Come down, Timo. Li Jing said hello. Yeah, Timo nodded. What are you talking about? What kind of fruit? It's a devil fruit. It's a weird fruit that can have special abilities after being eaten. Tren gave Timo a rough explanation. There are such strange fruits. Timo wiped the fluttering fruits on his hands. Yes, it's just like the one on your hand. Tren pointed to the fruit in Timo's arms. Oh, Timo was fascinated by what he heard. He subconsciously opened his mask and prepared to open his mouth and bite it. Something's wrong. No. At this moment, Tren just realized something and turned his head, but it was too late. He saw that Timo's mouth was only the slightest distance from the fruit. It's over. Looking at Timo, Tron closed his eyes. There was going to be one more landlubber on his boat. Holy shit, Timo, you can eat alone. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Jing, who was beside Timo, took it out, and Timo took it all. That's what I found. Timo glared at Li Jing. Everyone who meets you has a share. Li Jing raised his eyebrows. Well done. Seeing Li Jing's move to snatch the food, Tren breathed a sigh of relief, and then took the devil fruit in his hand. It's not that he doesn't want his team members to become ability users, but he wants to become that kind of ability users without side effects. Maybe the partner I summon next time will have very powerful research capabilities. Where did you get this? Tron took the piao fruit and stared at Timo and asked. It was the last time we were in Vermio. After we finished fighting, I saw it on a pirate ship. Because it was special among a bunch of ordinary apples, I picked it up. Timo scratched his head and stared in confusion. With Tren. This is the devil fruit. Tren said solemnly, looking at the patterned fruit in his hand. Devil fruit. That's right. Tren nodded, then turned to look at Xiaohei. There must be an illustrated book in your database. Of course, I can do anything. Xiaohei glanced at it and immediately displayed the information map. Read, Paramesha devil fruit, piao fruit. This is the devil fruit of the golden lion. Looking at the fluttering fruit in his hand, Tren couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He thought that the piao fruit would reappear somewhere after the golden lion died, but it just reappeared around him and was picked up by Timo. Thinking of this, Teren's expression lit up and he said, Xiaohei, if. I said if. For example, I pulled those ability users into the fruit bin of the Black Pearl and then. Is it possible that his fruit will be produced in it? Quote. Hearing Tren's conjecture, Xiaohe frowned, thought for a moment and then said, the generation of devil fruits and the probability of reincarnation should take a cycle. But if, Captain, you can transform the fruit warehouse on the Black Pearl into a space that limits the exposure of any energy, then after the Esper dies, the devil fruit's ability will be stripped from the Esper, but it will not be able to dissipate and enter the cycle. So I had to follow the rules and attach to the nearest fruit. Maybe you can really try this method. Supplement. The above author's own thoughts. After listening to Xiaohe's theory, Tren thought it was good. Anyway, I'll give it a try when the time comes, and it won't be a loss. After all, they are going to Sky Island next, and that guy Enel, Tren said in one sentence, is simply a waste of natural resources. But I am also worried that if Enel suddenly realizes that he cannot be beaten and uses the power of the Thunder Fruit to run away, it will still be very troublesome. Forget it, it's still early. Tren waved his hand, then took the Piao Piao fruit and followed the elevator on the Black Pearl to the third floor. This is the core area of the entire ship and where all items are stored. The fruit warehouse is filled with all kinds of fresh fruits, exuding an attractive aroma. The supply storage warehouse is filled with various materials to prepare for emergencies. In this place, there is also a special room, which is the trophy storage point specially built by Trent. When he opened the door silently, the lights suddenly turned on, illuminating the entire room. Facing the passage is a red carpeted passage, surrounded by rows of transparent glass covers, like a small museum. However, these glass covers are empty at the moment, and only one of them contains something. Those are the two famous swords, Sakura Ju, and Deadwood, among the 21 skills of the large sword owned by the Golden Lion. Tren carefully put the fluttering fruit in his hand into one of the glass covers. Then, light began to flash under the glass cover, and a name gradually emerged. In the end, the fluttering fruit was successfully included in the trophy room. It's still a bit empty. Looking at the empty combat storage area, Tren gritted his teeth. In fact, Tren also has a little secret that he has a bit of collecting addiction. He enjoys the process of collecting and the pleasure of constantly enriching his treasure house. I can use it, but I can't live without it. Famous swords and fruits are all good things, and adventurers should collect them all. Chapter 52 The Fourth Partner. Advertise here. Chapter 52, Chosen by Darkness. Active Mechanization. The Power of Steel, or the Controller of the Weather Cube. None of this is important. What is important is that this king is about to appear. The fourth partner, the choice of Dark Source, the Wolf King who broke out in silence, Big Wolf. Just as Tren and his party were heading towards Mogu Town, the direction closest to the Sky Island, there was a warship behind them also following their route. The sails of warships are completely different from the format of marine, but what is certain is that they also belong to the World Government Department. On the deck of a warship, a group of people in black formal suits sat quietly in their seats. But from the glances they cast at the same person from time to time, it can be seen that the man standing on the bow of the boat with long curly hair and a dove standing on his shoulder is their leader. Lu Qi looked at the sea silently and said calmly, "Isn't our mission to sneak into the Seven Waters City to find out the news about the ancient weapon blueprint? Spandam. Is this your attitude when talking to the commander?" Lu Qi. Hearing Lu Qi's question, he wore an exaggerated mask with purple hair on the side of the deck. Spangdam, who was wearing a black vest, a white long-sleeved shirt with black patterns and black trousers, slowly stepped forward. Because of his father Spandine, this guy was so arrogant that he even inherited his father's position and became the commander of CP9. We are also curious about the sudden change of mission. At this time, the long-nosed Kaku came out to play. Although no one here would regard Spandam as a superior, they cannot offend him. Yeah, I'm curious too. At this time, Khalifa, who had blonde hair and wore glasses and was tall, took the initiative to smile at Spandam. Okay. Looking at Khalifa's ambition, Spandam smiled obscenely, and then said, "The boss wants us to recruit a group of people to join the CP. Recruiting new people. But CP's recruitment." Bruno, who had horn hair, frowned. "Do you think they will be like us?" Ha. Spandam sneered and shook his head. "It means to let them be dogs. Do you know what dog means? Although it is also CP, it is completely different. Anyway, it is different from us." Quote. No wonder everyone went out. After all, that guy defeated the Golden Lion. Gabunu, who had a wine bottle hanging on his waist, two long beards growing from the corners of his mouth, and a scar on his left eye, smiled. "Golden Lion, you're just an old guy." Lu Qi suddenly spoke, his tone full of mockery. The CP9 members did not refute after hearing this, because in their eyes, this man was a real genius. The undefeated legend of Judiciary Island, who pursues dark justice and is the most powerful genius encountered once in 180 years. Rob Lu Qi. The most important thing is that Lu Qi himself believes that if he had met the Golden Lion at that time, he would have killed it easily. Spandam, since we want to talk, then we have more than one condition, right? Of course. Spangdam smiled and raised 3 fingers. They have 3 choices. First, go to New World and be a dog for Marine. Second, be a dog for us. Third, when it came to the third item, Spangdam made a gesture of wiping his neck, and then grinned, "Not even a dog." Yes, I understand. Lu Qi nodded, then looked at the black pearl not far ahead, his eyes calm and expressionless. On the side of the black pearl, Timo also saw the CP-9 warship at the observation deck, so he was alerted, and then he took out his sniper rifle and gradually disappeared, entering a state of invisibility. It doesn't look like a warship. Looking at the flag of the warship, Tren frowned. He was originally looking at the system's summoning progress, but after hearing Timo's reminder, he shifted his gaze to the sea. They are not friendly. Sadako lay on Tren's back and whispered. This is what Tren discovered recently, that Sadako seems to have an ability similar to perception. As for how I discovered it, I have to mention a guy who wanted to visit and experience ice cubes during a hot and restless night. Let's see what they want to do first. Tren didn't bother to pay attention to these things, but moved his eyes back to the system panel. Summon 110%, Indigo 10%, Golden Lion 85%, Garp 15%. Looking at the progress on the summon button, Tren couldn't help but feel happy. He had been busy with other things these days and didn't pay attention to the system. He didn't expect that he could already perform the fourth summons. The inner emotions of the Golden Lion before his death were very rich. Provided 85%. While Tren was tinkering with the system, CP-9's warship had already parked on the side of the Black Pearl. Spandis stepped forward and said in a disdainful tone. Which one of you is Jenny Tron? Rude guy. Li Jing looked at Spandam and snorted coldly. CP-9. Tren recognized several people on this warship at a glance. It seems that you are the guy who killed the Golden Lion. Seeing that Tren recognized them, Spandam turned his attention to him. Although he is arrogant, he is not really a fool. Now both parties are on the sea, and there are more capable people on his side. Once the negotiation breaks down, it will be detrimental to his side. Thinking of this, Spandam said calmly, since you know us, I won't introduce you too much. We have the conditions to represent the world government and need to talk to you about it. How about it? World government wants to recruit me as the 7 warlords of the sea. Tren frowned slightly, remembering that he killed the Golden Lion but was not wanted, and couldn't help but be curious. But I was more excited. After all, I just lack materials for my devil fruit reincarnation theory. We need to trick them into a land with few people so that they can do things more conveniently. For a moment, Spandam and Tren had the same idea in their minds, and then they said in unison. How about we find an island ahead to talk? X2. How to get on the road. Spandam looked at Tren and felt happy in his heart. Is it so accommodating to me? Tren looked at Spandam and the corners of his mouth slightly raised. The most important thing is that he now has another summoning opportunity in his hand. In this way, 2 people with similar minds sailed their boats to an unnamed desert island. People on both sides also disembarked one after another, but there were still many people in CP-9. On Tren's side, Li Jing and Sadako disembarked. As for Timo, he was invisible from beginning to end. Based on the intelligence, they should have a sniper. Lu Qi looked at Tren, who only had 3 people, and his eyes darkened slightly. It doesn't matter, 8 against 4. The advantage is mine. Spandam's expression became very arrogant again from the moment he landed on the desert island. Tell me about it. What are the conditions? Tren spoke first, but his eyes were already looking at the ability users in the CP. And Spandam lived up to expectations and arrogantly added his own conditions to the situation and said it again. Take your pick. Our dear Mr. Tron, Captain, haha. Spandam said with an arrogant smile, and then his expression became fierce. Or do you want to give up this opportunity? No way. You know, this is rare. Look, you don't have to go through special selection. Captain, let me kill him. Li Jing put his hand on the sword and stepped forward slightly. Everyone in CP-9 also stepped forward at the same time. Almost most of them tensed their muscles, ready to take action at any time. Haha, I didn't expect it to be you. Tren, who had been silent at this time, suddenly smiled. It turns out that Tren ordered the 4th summons when Spandam was talking about the conditions, and the 4th partner who came was pretty good. Although not human. Why are you laughing? Spandam looked at Tren, who was not afraid at all, and frowned. 3 animals and 2 paramesha. However, the door fruit is better. What are you talking about? Lu Qi looked at Tren, his eyes darkened, or, with your current answer, I can assume that you have chosen the 3rd option, right? Looking at Lu Qi, Tren smiled slightly and said, I heard that you are a genius that only happens once in 800 years. You can think of it this way. Lu Qi said calmly. As that's so, forget it. I'd better stop bullying you and let him do it. The corners of Tren's mouth raised slightly, revealing a disdainful smile. Then he gently pointed his finger towards the sky, as if summoning something. Suddenly, a jet black energy poured down from the sky. Disperse. Lu Qi's eyes flashed with alertness, and he reacted as quickly as possible and retreated quickly. Several other people also sensed the danger and followed Lu Qi's actions and spread out around. Bang! A loud noise came, accompanied by a strong wave of air sweeping past. The dust filled the air and the vision became blurry. However, at this moment, a cold voice came into everyone's ears. Captain Tren is right, you are not worthy of letting the commander take action, because I am enough alone. As the words fell, a more powerful energy surged out, blowing away the surrounding dust. Gradually, the dust dispersed, and a figure appeared in front of everyone. Lu Qi's eyes were fixed on the guy in front of him, and he couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Wolf, he murmured to himself, with a look of surprise in his eyes. The creature in front of him was clearly a werewolf, but it exuded a mysterious and powerful aura. Is it a fantasy beast type? Lu Qi thought to himself, thinking that the other party was a rare fantasy beast type ability user. Ha! A sharp gaze glanced over, making Lu Qi and others shiver. At this time, Big Wolf's eyes were like two black lightnings, extremely sharp, and the red pupils revealed a cold aura. There is a purple crown on the head, inlaid with bright gems, shining with mysterious light. The crown is also dotted with some green spike-like decorations, giving people a sense of majesty and inviolability. The pure black coat is decorated with feathers as white as snow, fluttering gently in the breeze, as if to tell its nobility and extraordinariness. And on its neck, it wears a golden necklace with a bright red gemstone inlaid in the middle, which is shining and dazzling. Shadow King Grey Wolf. Name: Shadow King Grey Wolf, from Shiwei. Abilities: Genius Inventor, Form Transformation. Strength: Grey Wolf has many forms. In addition to the normal Dark Source King, he also has Iron Man Grey Wolf, Mechanized Grey Wolf, and Element Controller, Weather Cube. I didn't expect it to be you. Grey Wolf. Looking at the Grey Wolf in front of him who exuded a dark aura and powerful power, Tren couldn't help but open his eyes wide in surprise. It's really unimaginable. This Grey Wolf is completely different from the Grey Wolf in his memory who always shouted, "I will come back," especially in terms of temperament. I have been looking for the leader for a long time. Grey Wolf's gloomy face showed an imperceptible smile, and he stared at Tren closely and said, Big Wolf. Cold sweat broke out on Kaku's forehead, because the terrifying coercion exuded by this guy made people breathless. There is no mention of such a number one person in the intelligence. What is going on? Spandam. Spandam's body trembled uncontrollably, and his voice was filled with a hint of fear. I don't know either. Spandam was already panicking and had no idea how to deal with this situation. What a dark guy. Lu Qi, who had always believed in dark justice, now felt that the guy in front of him was too dark. Hearing the CP's conversation, Big Wolf turned his head slightly, his hands filled with dark green energy. Haha, only Captain Tren is qualified to be called Grey Wolf. As for you, you have to call me the Wolf King. Big Wolf's voice was cold and majestic, as if he was announcing his identity and status to everyone. Chapter 53 Fight Alone. Advertise here. For a moment, the two sides were in a stalemate. Big Wolf's face was arrogant and his eyes were filled with disdain. Wolf King. Haha. Lu Qi raised the corner of his mouth, showing a disdainful smile, and shook his neck from side to side, as if he didn't take the Big Wolf seriously at all. Immediately afterwards, his body stretched slightly like a leopard. At the same time, he also entered the panther form of the cat fruit, and his body became yellow with black moderate dots, just like a humanoid cheetah. Then do you know that a lone wolf will die miserably? Before he finished speaking, Lu Qi seemed to teleport and disappeared with a whoosh. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Big Wolf, holding back his left hand. Bo! A punch rushed straight towards Big Wolf's chest like a cannonball. Looking at Big Wolf's dull expression, Lu Qi snorted coldly, slow. Bang! Lu Qi's words came to an abrupt end as a dull loud noise came. He looked down in shock, only to see a hand as hard and powerful as a hammer already embedded deeply into his abdominal cavity. You are the slow one. Big Wolf's voice seemed to come from the underworld, with endless chill and murderous intent. The deep voice made Lu Qi tremble all over. The next moment, Lu Qi felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if a powerful force was about to tear his internal organs into pieces. PFF'd. He opened his mouth uncontrollably, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. Immediately afterwards, his body flew backwards at an astonishing speed as if it had been hit by a cannonball. With a sharp sound breaking through the air, Lu Qi's body drew a long arc in the air and slammed into the center of the desert island. Wherever he passed, a deep ravine was plowed into the ground, and the smoke and dust billowed, which was shocking. Lu Qi's body fell heavily to the ground and slid forward for a while before stopping. His face was as pale as paper, and the blood spilling from the corners of his mouth dyed the ground beneath him red. Ahem. Ah. Lu Qi struggled to get up, coughing out blood from his mouth. Lu Qi. Big Wolf's blow instantly made everyone in CP9 wake up from a dream. Spandam, who was most afraid of death, was the first to react and shouted. Why are you still standing there? Let's all come together. Bastard. He's only one person, he can't stand it. At this moment, Jabra, who has the ability of the animal dog fruit, suddenly jumped up, his body changed rapidly, and he entered the wolf form in the blink of an eye. I am also a wolf, who is strong or weak. Let's try it. Jabra roared lowly, put his limbs together, and rushed towards the Grey Wolf at an extraordinary speed. Big Wolf dodged and easily dodged Jabra's attack. Is that all you have? Big Wolf mocked, gathering dark energy in his left hand. When Jabra saw this, he was not afraid. Instead, he showed a confident smile and then put his hands on his chest. Iron. What Jabra is best at is that he can still move even when his whole body is made of iron. Bang. Jabra took a hard punch from Big Wolf. Blood oozed slightly from the corner of his mouth, but he managed to defend himself. Is this all you have? Jabra laughed. If so, you can't break through my defense. I like your rebellious appearance, but. After saying this, Big Wolf slightly clenched his left hand, and his form entered a transformation. The original Dark Source normal state changed into the form of Iron Man. A sunflower steel hood is located on the head, with a purple orb on the waist and white eyes. You'd better be tough. In this form, Grey Wolf's abilities are somewhat similar to Whitebeard's shock fruit. Although it's not the fastest, it has the greatest power. Come and try. Big Wolf punched the ground hard, and then the ground within a distance between him and Jabra collapsed and exploded. Then Big Wolf used the exploded gravel to quickly approach Jabra. Iron. Looking at the sudden change of Big Wolf in front of him, Jabra once again protected his front with both hands. Ridiculous. Grey Wolf's fist was attached with white and transparent energy, and he smashed it out with endless power. Jabra's hands broke instantly, and his whole body hit the ground like a kite with a broken string. But Big Wolf would not give him another chance to speak. His fists fell like raindrops, and the cracks on the ground were like spider webs. As he hit Jabra with increasing force, the entire earth was torn apart like spider webs. After a moment, Big Wolf directly grabbed Jabra's head and lifted it up. Jabra's eyes turned white, his sternum collapsed, and his body was covered in blood, like a puddle of mud. Iron. Nothing more than that. Big Wolf sneered and kicked Jabra, sending it flying like a cannonball. Don't be too arrogant. Kaku slashed away with his sword with both hands. Return to life. Bound by hair. NVQU, who had long hair and held a Zen staff, followed closely behind. The two of them attacked Big Grey Wolf at the same time. It's still too weak. Grey Wolf opened his hands and blocked Kaku and NVQ's attacks one by one. He faced the two of them directly, his eyes were full of oppression, and then he pushed them back with a slight force. Don't waste time, come on together. Big Grey Wolf flexed his muscles, and then his whole body became mechanized, and the wolf claws on his hands were like orange lasers. Kaku and Nugu glanced at each other. They knew they had encountered a strong enemy, but as members of CP9, they would never back down. Kaku took the initiative and rushed towards Big Wolf with his two swords, trying to find his flaw. Big Wolf dodged sideways, then flew up with a kick, kicking Kaku several meters away. Yuku took the opportunity to wave his Zen staff, and his hair turned into a sharp blade to attack Big Wolf. But Big Wolf was extremely fast. He ducked behind Yuku and hit him on the back, knocking him to the ground. At the same time, Khalifa activated the bubble fruit ability and the owl with a zipper in its mouth used shave. Bruno also rushed forward. Is that all you have? Grey Wolf mocked the 5 people with a mechanical voice, and then the wolf claws merged to form a two-handed laser sword. The 5 PC9 players cooperated with each other tacitly, with 3 attacking and 2 defending, making it difficult for them to separate from Big Wolf. However, Big Wolf doesn't want to play anymore. Wei Tailong's figure flickered and he quickly changed back to his powerful Dark Source form. Following the change, a dark energy that was so rich that it could not be dissolved poured out of him like a surging, stormy wave, sweeping across the entire battlefield instantly like a flood that broke a bank. This dark energy carries suffocating pressure and destructive power, as if it is going to swallow everything up, making people tremble. Is this kind of power really something we can match? Looking at the Grey Wolf floating in midair, surrounded by dark energy, with the thunder spear in his hand shining with dazzling light, everyone in CP showed a look of fear. Their hearts are filled with despair and helplessness. However, Big Wolf's eyes revealed incomparable confidence and majesty. He raised the thunder spear in his hand and declared loudly, "It's still the same sentence, I am the Wolf King." Big Wolf's voice echoed on the battlefield like the thunder spear falling from his hand, shocking everyone's heart. Chapter 54 Treasure Ship Upgrade. Advertise here. The thunder spear, which was like a punishment from heaven, hit hard, as if it was going to tear the entire island apart. The thunder spear carried endless power and struck at the CP9 people mercilessly. Its purpose was obvious, to completely obliterate them. It's over. CP9 everyone's faces were ashen, and their eyes were full of despair and fear. Faced with such a terrifying attack, they almost resigned themselves to their fate and stood quietly, waiting for their tragic fate to come. However, at this critical moment, only Bruno showed unusual courage and decisiveness. He did not choose to sit still and wait for death, but relied on the ability of the Paramesha fruit to take quick action. I saw Bruno pulling Lu Chi to his side in an instant, and immediately activated his ability, opening a door to the unknown realm. What are you doing? Let's go, he shouted anxiously, urging everyone to lead Lu Chi to escape from this dangerous place. At this moment, Bruno's voice was like the dawn, penetrating the darkness and awakening the desire to survive deep in the hearts of others. Spandam came to his senses as if he had just woken up from a dream, rushed into the door without hesitation, and disappeared from everyone's sight. As Spandam left, Bruno breathed a sigh of relief, but he knew that the crisis had not been resolved and there were others who had not left, so he continued to maintain his ability. At the same time, he stared closely at the thunder spear that was about to hit the ground, secretly praying that Lu Qi could escape safely. At the same time, other members of CP9 were also awakened by Bruno's actions. They looked at the door and fled madly inside. Khalifa and Kaku moved with difficulty carrying the seriously injured Lu Qi on their backs, and finally were able to enter. Bruno, come in quickly. Lu Qi looked back at Bruno, the tall man with horn hairdo, and shouted anxiously. You go quickly and don't worry about me. Bruno smiled happily after seeing that everyone except Jabra, who had been beaten to death, had left safely. What do you mean? Lu Qi's pupils trembled suddenly. He endured the severe pain from the wound and shouted at the top of his lungs. I can't leave. Bruno's voice became a little weak, but he still tried to maintain the smile on his face, but his forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat. If Lu Qi and others observe carefully, they will find that there are many small poisonous marks on Bruno's neck, arms, back and other places at some point. These poisonous marks were shot by Timo, and the poisonous marks were also filled with sea stone powder. At this moment, these powders are flowing around Bruno's body with his blood, so Bruno is already trying his best to support the door, just to ensure that other members of CP9 can escape smoothly. Bruno. Khalifa's tears flowed out uncontrollably like a bursting flood. Her beautiful face was shrouded in sadness, which was heartbreaking. Kaku on the side gritted his teeth, holding back the grief and anger in his heart. Lu Qi, on the other hand, closed his eyes silently, seeming to be trying to calm down his emotions, but his clenched fists revealed his inner agitation. After a while, Lu Qi slowly opened his eyes and said calmly, let's go. However, Khalifa couldn't help shouting, the road. This is the opportunity Bruno bought with his life. Let's go. Lu Qi suddenly yelled loudly, his eyes became sharp and he stared at Tren not far away. Then, he stared deeply at Tren for a moment, as if he wanted to carve the other person into the depths of his memory. Next time, I will kill you myself, Jenny Tren. Lu Qi's voice was cold and firm, revealing endless killing intent. After saying this, he turned around resolutely and led the remaining CP9 members away. As the door slowly closed, Bruno could no longer use his abilities. He felt weak all over and fell heavily to the ground. This battle was extremely brutal. Big Grey Wolf single-handedly faced everyone in CP9, not only killing Jabra and Bruno, but also severely injuring 7 others, while he himself was left with slightly dirty clothes. A few days later, in the spacious fruit warehouse of the Black Pearl. Big Wolf stood alone among a pile of fruits. He stared intently at the purple fruit with a strange pattern in his hand. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing an imperceptible smile. I saw Big Wolf waving his fingers gently, releasing a burst of dark energy, which quickly enveloped Bruno's body like a black whirlwind. In the blink of an eye, Bruno's body was completely swallowed up by the dark energy and disappeared without a trace. Captain, this should be what you want. Big Wolf said calmly, and handed the mysterious fruit in his hand to Tren. Tren took the fruit and looked at it carefully. His eyebrows were raised slightly, and a look of surprise flashed in his eyes. Although it took a long time, he never expected that Big Grey Wolf's dark energy could successfully strip the fruit's ability from the corpse of the devil fruit user and bestow it on this ordinary fruit. Can your dark energy still be used like this? I originally planned to create an energy shield myself to achieve this goal. Tren stared at the door fruit in his hand with a face full of curiosity. Big Wolf waved his hand easily and explained with a smile. Actually, the principle is exactly the same as the idea you mentioned, leader, except that I cleverly used my own dark energy to replace the energy shield. The advantage of this is that it saves a lot of time and the effect is more significant. Quote. Seeing Big Wolf's chuckle, Tren noticed at this moment that this guy was also a genius inventor. So Tren took Big Wolf all the way to the loot storage point and collected the Menman fruit. It seems that the leader likes to collect these fruits. Big Grey Wolf looked at the 2 devil fruits in the glass cover and couldn't help but sigh. And Tren was also thinking at this time. In fact, he felt that his members did not need to rely on the so-called devil fruits at all. Because they have their own unique abilities, they are no weaker than those with devil fruit abilities, but using devil fruits is a waste of effort. Thinking of this, Terran's expression suddenly brightened up. Sure enough, his team members didn't need it, so could the Black Pearl be used. It just so happens that the summoning gift this time is Treasure Ship Upgrade Module. Treasure Ship Upgrade Module. It can provide an ability for the Black Pearl. The negative effect is that it will automatically play when the Black Pearl appears on the scene in the future Pirates of the Caribbean BGM. Big Wolf. What's wrong, Captain? Big Wolf turned his head and stared at Tren. You said, you can use the abilities of these devil fruits on the Black Pearl. For example, with the Piao fruit, the Black Pearl can have the ability to briefly dive and buffer the landing. There is also the Gate fruit, which gives the Black Pearl the ability to briefly travel through space. Quote. Listening to Tren's words, Big Grey Wolf immediately understood the idea of his leader, and said with a smile, and the fruit will not be consumed, right? Yes, he is indeed a genius inventor, haha. It's nothing. If it weren't for the leader and everyone, I wouldn't be here today. Big Wolf looked at Tren and smiled. Looking at Big Wolf, Tren had no worries. Professional matters should be left to professionals. So Tren took out the treasure ship upgrade module from the warehouse and handed it to Big Wolf. Then what happens next depends on you, the genius inventor of our adventure group. No problem. Big Wolf took the treasure ship upgrade module and headed towards the research room, and also asked Tren for the ship elf Xiaohe, because he was needed for many things. By the way, for the image of Xiaohe, you can refer to Lingbao in the King. Watching Big Wolf leave, Tren also stepped on the price escalation ladder and prepared to return to the deck. During the process of ascending, he also checked the system progress. Summon 45%, Indigo 10%, Lucci 35%. Is it because Lucci was present and was the leader, so he was the only one who received his emotions? Looking at the 45% progress, Tren stretched. Forget it, let's go and bask in the sun. Chapter 55 The Bounty of Tren Adventure Group is announced. Advertise here. The Grand Line, the Island of Justice. This island belongs exclusively to World Government, a department directly under the CP organization. Like Underwater Prison, it is an organization independent of Marine headquarters. At this time, in Judiciary Island, everyone in CP9 was lying quietly in the built-in hospital. What a whiteboard background, that's a group of extremely evil pirates. Spangdam yelled at the phone bug in his hand. Lucci and others were all taciturn. Bruno and Jabra were both dead. Especially Bruno's death made them feel heavy. Hey, what's your expression? Spandam looked at the expressions of Lucci and others, completely ignoring the bandages on his body, and cursed fiercely. After getting tired of scolding, Spandam sat down directly on the chair and said slowly, just now you are almost recovered. The CP will send someone to inquire about our battle situation later. You have to say that Jenny Tren and her gang are not just a clean slate. They are extremely vicious pirates, and the information provided by Marine is wrong. And we, CP9, fought hard against Jenny Tron's group, and finally we paid the price of the lives of 2 members before severely injuring their group and being able to retreat. Quote. Lucci also heard what Spandam meant, which was to fake the situation of the battle and pass the blame to Marine. This way, Kaku hesitated. Why are you here? I have the political connections left by my father. You just have to quietly do what I say. Spangdam spat. Bah, how can you be a genius who only comes across once in 800 years, only to be knocked out with one punch? Lucci. Spandam is right, Lucci and others don't understand what political relations are at all. Otherwise, in the original work, after Spandam was defeated by Robin using his fruit power, the group of them would have lived a life of wandering entertainers and curing diseases. You can say that Spandam is sinister, relying on father's power, etc. But you can't say that Spandam is useless, because only with him can the people above notice CP9. An organization needs obedient thugs like Lucci, but it also needs leaders with superior connections like Spandam. Looking at Spandam, although Lucci was very unhappy with this guy, he just nodded. When the other CPs saw Lucci nodding, they also cooperated, so the blame was easily thrown on Marine's head. Marine Headquarters, Marineland. Fleet Admiral Sengoku had a sullen face, turned off the phone with force, and roared angrily, put everything on Marine, CP is so powerful, why don't you let them catch the 4 emperors? What a bunch of bastards. Lieutenant General he took a sip of tea, raised his eyes, and stared at Warring States calmly. CP's recruitment operation failed, right? Lieutenant General he asked calmly. As for Garp, Sengoku has sent him to the New World to scare those pirates. Sengoku sighed and replied helplessly. These guys not only put all the responsibility on us, Marine, but also accused us of providing wrong intelligence. Is there a problem with our intelligence? Lieutenant General he keenly grasped the key to the problem. It seems that there is a new member in Tren's group. Warring States frowned and handed the news about Big Wolf to he. This information mainly comes from the video bugs on the warship sailed by CP, but the content of the picture has been deliberately edited, and only the picture of the CP9 people besieging Big Wolf is retained, which is completely taken out of context. A user with Phantom Beast type Devil Fruit abilities. He looked at Big Grey Wolf's face and frowned. Not to mention, the Dark Source King's normal Grey Wolf does not look like a good person. The most outrageous thing is that that group of shameless people actually brazenly claimed that they had severely damaged Tren and his gang. Warring States became more and more angry as he thought about it, and the anger in his heart kept rising. You know, right on his desk is a piece of information about the grand banquet held by Tren and his gang on the ship 2 days ago. Looking at those photos, the scene of Tren and his group laughing and having fun seems to be right in front of them. And what these guys call heavy damage is simply nonsense. Alas, he put down the information in his hand, sighed slightly, and asked, what does it mean now? We are required to arrest Jenny Tren and her gang. Wanted. He pursed her lips. In fact, she had learned about Tren's adventure group since that meeting. After all, I haven't heard the word adventure group for a long time. I didn't expect that the sea today can no longer accommodate real adventurers. That's why I invited you here to confirm their bounty status. Okay, but once you take this step, you really can't take it back, Warring States. He is very smart, and she knows the secrets here. I feel very frustrated as a Marine Fleet Admiral. Sometimes I really envy that bastard Garp. In the year 1519 of the Haiyuan calendar, there was still 1 year before Luffy went to sea, which was also the first year after Tren traveled through time. All members of the Tren Adventure Group have been officially issued a wanted order by Marine Headquarters. The first half of the Grand Line, the sea area. On the deck of the Black Pearl, the bored Sadako took off today's newspaper from the poster gull and opened it with interest. However, the moment she opened it, several wanted posters fell out like fallen leaves. Is it another wanted order? Sadako frowned, then picked them up. But when she saw the picture on the wanted poster, her pupils trembled suddenly, as if she was struck by lightning, and instantly turned into countless particles and flew to Tren's side, shouting anxiously. Captain, we are wanted. As soon as Sadako said this, everyone on the deck lit up. Wanted. Big Wolf, who was tinkering with things, turned his eyes slightly to the side. Is there one too, sir? Li Jing rushed over in a hurry. I didn't expect that Timo would be wanted one day. Timo smiled slightly. Jenny Tren and her team became famous for killing the legendary pirate Golden Lion Shiki. Today the government officially announced the bounty amount of their team leader Jenny Tren and the other 4 core cadres. This news is like a blockbuster bomb detonated the entire world in an instant, causing an uproar. Why do I have so many? Sadako looked surprised as her hair was blown away by the wind. Combatant. Grudge Ghost Sadako, bounty of 350 million belly. Close black lens bracket. This amount is less than the guys I caught before. Timo wiped his sniper rifle. Sniper. Ghost Scout Timo, bounty of 390 million belly. Close black lens bracket. It's not bad, but it doesn't suit my status. Next time it will be better. Big Wolf couldn't help but sneered as he looked at the wanted notice in his hand, then put it on the table and continued to tinker with it. Inventor. Shadow Wolf King Big Wolf, bounty of 850 million Baileys. Close black lens bracket. No, what the hell kind of name is this? It's not auspicious at all. Li Jing looked at the name on the wanted poster and vomited out a mouthful of blood. The deputy leader of the Tren Adventure Group, Sword Demon Li Jing, has a bounty of 1 billion Baileys. Close black lens bracket. Alas, looks like he has turned into a pirate. Tren looked at his wanted poster and sighed deeply. The leader of Tren Adventure Group, Frost Knife Tren, has a bounty of 1.4 billion belly. P.S. The characters selected by the character card are Ship Doctor, Baymax, Forging Demigod, Orn, Patch, only 2 meters. Combatant Shadow Eater, Gengar. In addition, if you have any ideas, you can comment here. The above are the partners who have been confirmed to be summoned. Of course, some like Tom are already in the plan. Thank you for your support. I love you. Chapter 56 Sailing Time. The announcement of the bounty of the Tren Adventure Group just allowed a few people to pass the time in their boring time. Because the next sailing route is to Gaia, the journey is long. As the first ray of sunlight penetrated the clouds, the Black Pearl sailed slowly and continued towards its destination. The cries of seagulls accompany the sailing of the ship, as if they are following the ship so that they can rest when they are tired from flying. At the same time, on the deck, Tren and Li Jing looked at each other. Come on, Li Jing, I am a 3-sword style. Tren muttered with Sakura Ten in one hand and Deadwood in his mouth with Gamble in his mouth. As for why he bit Guli, because the other 2 knives were not very clean. Captain, why don't you change your style? Look how drooling he is. Li Jing held the sword and turned his wrist slightly, doing a traditional sword show. The sword body shone brightly in the sun. Bah. It's strange, why doesn't Zoro drool when I see him biting it? Tren took off the gambler and wiped his mouth. My jaw is still sore. Captain, you are still suitable for hacking randomly. Li Jing, what are you talking about? These are my famous moves. Commander, can you do it a second time? Li Jing's eyes turned slightly sideways. Looking at Li Jing's little expression, Tren curled his lips and said, superficial. Real swordsmanship always has changes, which will never make others guess. The swordsman of Captain Tren has so many changes. Ha ha. You're still smiling. I won't drink de Hongpao for you today. No, Captain, don't. My only hobby is drinking tea. It's starting again. On the other side of the deck, Sadako, who was looking at Tren and Li Jing, who were concentrating on pruning the fruit trees, shook her head, but continued to do her own thing. I saw her fingers moving dexterously among the branches, and every cut was just right, making the fruit tree more neat and beautiful. The sunlight penetrated through the gaps in the leaves and directly penetrated her body, forming Madara's dappled light and shadow. Otherwise, because Sadako couldn't feel the sunlight at all, the sunlight would pass through her body. But this did not affect her face, which was filled with a satisfied smile. Timo did not stay on the observation deck today. Instead, he found a quiet corner and sat by the guardrail. He also changed out of his Omega Team uniform, and instead wore a cool hoodie, holding a fishing rod in his hand, patiently waiting for the fish to bite. The sea breeze blew against his cheek, and the waves gently slapped the hull of the boat, making a pleasant sound. Captain Tren said that we need to make a nest to get fish, but I've released so many fish, why haven't I caught any fish yet? Timo's eyes were fixed on the water. Whenever a fish touched the bait, he would carefully adjust the fishing rod, hoping to catch something. But this fish is just teasing you, and he just won't take the bait. Several times Timo wanted to poison you directly. As for Big Big Wolf, he can be said to be the busiest. He sits quietly under the mast of the ship, surrounded by various books and notes. The ship spirit is responsible for cooperating with Big Wolf to switch the information on the holographic screen. As a result, Big Big Wolf's eyes switched back and forth between the book page and the screen from time to time, trying to find out research nodes, energy conversion formulas, and issues such as the energy released by objects. Everyone on the ship is enjoying this period of sea life in their own way, although the destination is still far away. But the calm days did not last long, because the weather on the Grand Line changed at a moment's notice. The weather was originally clear and clear. In the blink of an eye, lightning flashed across the dark cloudy sky and thunder roared. The calm sea surface also stirred up strong winds and huge waves, as if they were about to swallow up the Black Pearl. Everyone, let's go to the restaurant. The weather is crazy again. Tren's voice seemed particularly firm in the storm. Oh, it rained heavily for 3 days and there was a strong wind for 2 days. Li Jing quickly put away his sword and sighed helplessly. It seems that we can only prune this far today. Sadako also stopped pruning work. Because it was a ghost, her figure looked particularly lonely in the wind and rain. Sadako walked to the side of the orchard, pressed a switch, and then a semicircular windshield rose up on both sides of the orchard. Big Big Wolf, come here and help me. Timo's fishing plan had to be temporarily suspended. At the same time, due to the Yordle's naturally short stature, he could only nervously hold on to the guardrail for fear that he would be swept away by the strong wind. Of course, the most important thing is that his equipment has been changed along with his clothes, otherwise it would just be a matter of hooking him up. At this moment, the storm became more and more violent, and the huge waves were constantly hitting the hull, and it seemed that the Black Pearl would be completely engulfed in the next second. Timo, just call me, King Grey Wolf, and I will come to help you. Grey Wolf looked at Timo's embarrassed appearance, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and showed a teasing smile. You are taking advantage of the situation. Timo's eyes widened and he shouted angrily. He never expected that Big Big Wolf would still want to take advantage of him. However, faced with such bad weather and rough waves, Timo really had no other choice. Gritting his teeth, he finally spoke reluctantly, King Big Big Wolf. Hey, I'm here, ha 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 ha. Hearing this call, Big Big Wolf nodded with satisfaction, and then quickly came to Timo to help him stabilize his body. Looking at the smiling Grey Wolf, Timo pursed his lips, and then said with a smile, Big Grey Wolf, do you usually drink water? Of course. Big Grey Wolf said Kaido as he walked towards the elevator of the Black Pearl. Then drink more. King Big Big Wolf. Big Big Wolf. No, you Yordles are all so vindictive. Big Grey Wolf looked at Timo who jumped into the elevator in small steps and smacked his lips. Humph. Timo snorted coldly. The second floor of the Black Pearl, the restaurant. This is the place where the Tren Adventure Group eats. The ceiling is high and hung with bright crystal chandeliers. The lights fall on the wooden floor, reflecting warm light. The walls are covered with dark wooden boards inlaid with golden decorative lines, giving people an elegant and solemn feeling. There is a huge solid wood dining table in the center of the restaurant, which can accommodate many people dining at the same time. The table is covered with a white linen tablecloth, and exquisite tableware is neatly placed on it, sparkling. It is surrounded by comfortable leather dining chairs with beautifully carved patterns on the backs. Through the tall windows, you can see the rough sea. With this huge space, others will never be able to tell that this is the middle level of a ship. Are you having lunch so soon? Captain Tren is still cooking. Timo and Big Big Wolf walked out of the lift and entered the restaurant. The aroma wafts out from the kitchen and permeates the entire restaurant, teasing people's taste buds. Stop shouting. Come and help quickly. Tren poked his head out of the kitchen and stared at Big Big Wolf, because this guy is the only wolf with cooking skills. I hope I can summon a partner who is good at cooking next time. Chapter 57 Crocodile appears briefly. Advertise here. Booyah Island, where Sky Island is located just behind Alabasta, so Tren and his group spent almost half of their time sailing. I remember this timeline correctly. Crocodile Studio should have almost ruled Alabasta. Tren was lying on the guardrail of the ship with a bored look on his face, thinking to himself. In fact, when they were replenishing supplies in Alabasta, Tren originally planned to go to the Sand Crocodile to refresh his mind and emotions. However, what is surprising is that no matter how hard he searches, he can never find the Sand Crocodile. It was as if the Sand Crocodile had disappeared out of thin air, leaving no trace behind. Alas. Tren sighed deeply, then turned around and returned to the cabin. What's going on, Captain? Is there something wrong with the country that just docked for supplies? Timo asked with curiosity on his face while eating melon seeds. Obviously, after such a long sea voyage, even Timo could no longer stand the boring life of staying on the observation deck, especially with the endless sea in front of him. In my opinion, the leader probably thought of certain people or things, and then suddenly realized that what he thought was not quite consistent with the reality. Big Big Wolf naturally grabbed Timo's melon seeds from his bag. A lot. Just when the conversation between them was getting more and more off topic, Li Jing walked over slowly, stroking his beard. You two must be quite curious. Do you know the reason? Upon hearing this, Big Grey Wolf and Timo raised their heads almost at the same time and stared at Li Jing closely. Ahem, I am the deputy captain after all, so I know a thing or two about the captain's affairs. Forget it then, I guess the meaning of knowing a little bit is similar to our guess. Big Wolf waved his hand casually, and Timo also retracted his gaze from the distance and continued to eat melon seeds leisurely. Tisk, you should ask me something. Li Jing saw the two people's lack of interest and instantly became active. He lowered his head actively and covered his mouth with one hand, and said softly. Captain, he's looking for his old friend. Oh, as soon as Li Jing finished speaking, Big Wolf and Timo's eyes lit up at the same time, as if they were ignited with some kind of enthusiasm. They instantly spread drinks, fruits, snacks, etc. all over the floor, and said in unison, okay, explain. That's right. In fact, Captain Tren secretly went to find someone when we went out to purchase supplies. Li Jing raised his eyebrows, seeming to be very proud of the exclusive news he had obtained. Then how can you be so sure? Timo frowned and questioned, maybe the leader just went to buy other items. Yeah, Big Wolf nodded repeatedly, agreeing with Timo's point of view, and at the same time turned his eyes and stared at Li Jing closely. Impossible. Captain Tren had nothing in his hand when he came back, and he kept chanting the word, sand crocodile. Li Jing smacked his lips, and then continued. Look at, sand crocodile, what kind of crocodile is sand? And isn't there a saying that is very good? Women are made of water. What does that have to do with sand crocodile? Big Wolf looked confused. Ah, what is the name of the country we are supplying to? Alabasta. Timo replied instantly, suddenly seeming to realize something, this is a desert country. That's right. Li Jing nodded, and then asked the two of them to get closer before continuing. So. In a desert country, a woman made of water is also a woman made of sand. Isn't the sand crocodile a woman? Is there something wrong? Big Wolf always felt that Li Jing's explanation was strange. What's wrong? If it's something else, would the leader be so decadent? This kind of situation usually only occurs when it comes to women. So Sand Crocodile is the group leader's old friend. At the same time, in a super secluded place in Alabasta, Crocodile, who wore a fur cigar with a big back, a long scar on his face, and 50-50 written all over his face, breathed a sigh of relief as he looked at the ship that was moving away. Boss, why should we hide? Mr. One stared at Crocodile with a confused look on his face. Kedikdar did not reply to Mr. One's words, but smoked a cigar, looked into the distance with deep eyes, and said slowly, Tren Adventure Group, a pirate group that has just emerged recently, defeated Fekong High with a single force. Thieves. The leader of the group, Jenny Tron, had a bounty of up to 1.4 billion Baileys. She even single-handedly killed the legendary pirate Golden Lion with a bounty of 3.5 billion. Now the total bounty of the entire Tren Adventure Group has almost reached an astonishing 4 billion Baileys. Having said this, Kedikdar turned his head slightly, glanced at Mr. One, and then said, I don't want to provoke such a powerful threat to an opponent right now. After all, we have more important things to deal with. Hearing this, Mr. One seemed to understand something. He nodded and then asked, So, boss, is this the reason why you informed Marine? Kedikdar raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a smile, but his eyes were extremely cold. He sneered and replied, I am one of the 7 warlords of the sea, what's wrong with informing Marine? Then, his tone became more serious. In addition, the royal princess seems to have noticed some clues. You should know what this means, right? I understand, I'll let Mr. 3 handle it when they leave. After saying that, Mr. 1 nodded and left. After Mr. 1 left, Kedikdar showed a solemn look that was completely different from the relaxed look just now. Frost Knife. Taren, what does this guy want from me? Or should I, Kedikdar, be your next target? It's impossible that Kedikdar didn't know that Tren was looking for someone so blatantly, so he hid. You know, he became famous by fighting against Bullet when he was 20 years old. Then he also challenged Whitebeard in the New World. However, despite being a brave man, the Sand Crocodile now only wants to find Pluton and rely on external help. Returning to the Black Pearl, after a brief stop at Alabasta for resupply, the Black Pearl set sail again and moved forward, finally arriving at the destination of this trip, Guy Island. Subsequently, it successfully landed in Magic Valley Town. It's been almost a month, and we're finally here. Tren jumped off the boat first, followed by others. The Sky Island is also on land. Li Jing looked at the town in front of him with a look of confusion on his face. Of course Sky Island is in the sky. And didn't Xiao He just say that we are on Guy Island? Big Wolf said with a smile. Big Wolf is right, Mogu Town is just a foothold for us. Commander, what are we going to do next? Li Jing glanced at Tren. Go across Magic Valley Town to find a guy. I hope he already knows the location of the sky current. I really want to experience it. Tren said as he walked inside. This time inside the Black Pearl, Sadako chose to stay and watch the ship, Satimo accompanied her. Chapter 58 Demon Valley Town. Advertise here. Magic Valley Town is located on the coast of Gaia Island and is one of the many seaside towns on this island. Its unique location makes this a special place. There is no trace of a marine base around. Because of this, this town often attracts countless vicious pirates to settle down. The streets in Magic Valley Town are narrow and winding, lined with a variety of shops and taverns. These places have also become places for pirates to exchange information, recruit partners, and plan. This is really a gathering place for pirates. Tren frowned as he looked at the chaotic Demon Valley town. Captain, we are also pirates. Li Jing reminded from the side. We are different. I don't even understand why the world government wants to assign us the identity of pirates. Are only pirates free on the sea? The leader is right. How about we go to the marine headquarters and have a big fight with them? Big Grey Wolf's eyes suddenly lit up. You must know that he is the Shadow King, and the kindness in his heart only blooms towards the members of the adventure group. Others can see that it is completely different. Is this really okay? Timo looked at the evil-looking Grey Wolf and had some doubts about this idea, but he did not directly deny it. Come on. Do you think I will take risks with you? Tren rolled his eyes at Big Wolf. In the group, Sadako is the only one who can guarantee that she will not be injured and cannot be attacked, as is the concept level Li Jing, and the other one is herself who has a self-healing body, but if the attack she withstands is too fierce, she will not be able to withstand it. As for the positioning of Grey Wolf, it is a typical high attack and low defense. The four forms are almost all with explosive attack power. It can be said that Li Jing's attack power is not as good as Grey Wolf, but in terms of defense. However, Big Wolf's idea is not completely unfeasible, it just requires the cooperation of him and Li Jing, but it will be more or less injured. So this kind of thing should be done slowly. After all, if you want to fight, the whole group will fight together. I just said it casually. What to do depends on your wishes, the leader. Big Grey Wolf waved his hand casually. However, just as Tren and his party were walking on the streets of Magic Valley Town, there was suddenly a dull crashing sound. Bang. It turned out that a very drunk pirate rushed over without warning and fell to the ground. Asshole. Don't you have eyes? If you don't need them, Lousy can dig them out for you. It's him. Everyone around them took a closer look and discovered that the pirate wearing suspenders turned out to be Basketball, Music-kun, who had a bounty of 25 million Baileys. Many people around recognized this famous pirate. I heard that he has become famous after only going to sea for 2.5 years. His strength should not be underestimated. Someone exclaimed. That's right, last time he crashed into a marine warship with one shoulder move. Another person echoed. These guys are screwed. Ha ha. For a moment, all the pirates on the street gathered around, watching the excitement with great interest, wanting to see how Tren and his gang would end. However, Tren didn't care about the gazes around him at all. He just glanced at the pirate and said softly, Big Wolf, go and deal with it. Hey, do you also want to taste my power? Music-kun turned over angrily and was about to use his fame ability to hit Tren, who had his back turned to him. At this moment, Big Wolf took the initiative to take a step forward, and saw a mysterious dark energy surging in his left hand. This power seemed to be floating in the wind and quickly gathered in his palm. Soon after, Wei Tailong suddenly reached out and grabbed Music-kun's neck accurately. You. Before Music-kun could finish his words, his eyes suddenly rolled up and his body fell to the ground softly. Immediately afterwards, his entire body was engulfed by endless dark energy, and he disappeared bit by bit from everyone's eyes. From beginning to end, Big Wolf didn't say a word. After all, this kind of waste of time would be scolded by readers if it were written out completely. It's him. The Shadow Wolf King with a terrifying bounty of 850 million. A pirate stared at the bounty order in his hand with horror on his face, his body trembling involuntarily, as if he had seen the world. It was like a doomsday, and the pupils shrank violently due to extreme shock. What? You are definitely kidding. There are 850 million pirates. How could an existence of this level appear here? Another pirate was also frightened, and his voice was trembling. Became sharp. I heard that just for the sake of eating delicious mutton, he relied on his invincible strength to completely destroy the entire country. Another pirate came over and said in a low voice, his face it was full of fear and awe. No, we must escape from here quickly. Otherwise, once he finds out, we will definitely die miserably. The pirates shouted in panic, turned around and prepared to leave, not intending to gamble on this illusory safety. I didn't know you, Big Wolf, had destroyed a country. Tren smiled and glanced at Big Wolf. It's all rumors. Big Wolf said helplessly as he looked at the street that instantly became cleaner. Is this really true? Li Jing leaned over, raised his eyebrows, and said seriously, is the sheep so delicious? Big Wolf. Okay, Li Jing, do you still need to question the ability of our Shadow Wolf King to catch sheep? Tren reprimanded Li Jing seriously. It was me who was abrupt. So, is sheep really delicious? Timo asked again abruptly. That's enough, you two. Ha ha ha. Just when several people were joking with each other, something unexpected happened. I saw that the pirate who had left because he was afraid of Big Wolf's reputation ran back with a look of horror on his face, and stammered, Big. However, When they saw Tren and his group, before they could finish speaking, a sudden biting cold wind hit them, and they were instantly frozen into ice sculptures, and they still looked terrified. This ability can't be possible. Seeing this scene, Tren's originally relaxed expression immediately became serious, and he stared ahead alertly. At the same time, Li Jing and Big Big Wolf shouted at the same time, "There is a troublesome guy coming." Immediately afterwards, Timo also reacted quickly and used the hook to climb up to a high place for his own convenience. "Oh, I originally thought that I could take advantage of the vacation to take a romantic sea ride from the headquarters." A slightly lazy voice came from the corner of the street, and along with the voice came the gradual freezing of ice streets. At this moment, a tall figure walked out from inside. He is nearly 3 meters tall, has curly hair, wears an eye patch on his forehead, and wears a white vest and a dark blue long-sleeved shirt. "Hey, you guys are here too." Aokiji looked at Tren and the others, raised his hand and waved, saying hello. Tren looked at the person in front of him and forced a smile on his lips. "I didn't expect you to show up here." Marine General, Kuzan, or rather, Aokiji. Chapter 59 Aokiji. Advertise here. I don't want to. After all, the good vacation ends early. Aokiji's voice was slightly low and magnetic, making people think that he was lazy. "So, you didn't come to us specially." There was a hint of ridicule and helplessness in Tren's tone. From Aokiji's tone, Tren knew that it was definitely no accident that the Marine General appeared here. But to be honest, Tren doesn't want to meet Marine's highest combat power at all right now. If I remember correctly, the strength of the 3 generals is comparable to the 4 emperors in a one-on-one situation. And Aokiji's fighting power is not low. In the later stage of the comic, even the 5 elders used the phrase, "such a strong fighter turned to Blackbeard," to describe it, not to mention the 10 days and 10 nights of battle with Akainu. Aokiji didn't seem to care about Tren's attitude. He was still smiling, and his eyes revealed a kind of confidence and calmness. Well, he slowly walked dozens of meters away from Tren, stopped, looked down and said, "The total bounty of the Tren Adventure Group is almost 4 billion Baileys. In fact, I am also very curious about your fighting ability, even though you were not famous at all before." Quote. "This is not a fun thing. Kuzan." Tren raised his head and looked at Aokiji, his eyes flickering, and in his mind, the golden lion smile before his death. And the words, "You are destined to be a pirate," echoed in my mind. My attitude towards marine or pirates has always been very calm, but if you really want to play, believe me, you won't be able to bear it. Aokiji frowned slightly after hearing what Tren said, but then he laughed again. Haha, what a funny guy. In Kuzan's current mind, Tren and his gang simply defeated a golden lion who had disappeared for a long time and whose strength was unknown. And he has never seen a real strong person, so he becomes arrogant. Thinking of this, Aokiji took his hand out of his pocket. He had received the order anyway, and Tron and his gang were not part of the Straw Hat Pirates with Robin's background, so let's just capture them. Then please come back with me, please. But, Aokiji watched as Tren raised his left hand slightly, the cold air in his palm condensed into a sphere, and then turned around and shot towards a certain roof. "I have to deal with you first." Bump. The ice ball was chopped off by Li Jing with a sword, and Timo also appeared behind Li Jing. Seeing that his attack was blocked, Aokiji frowned, looked at the middle-aged man who cut off his attack, and said slowly, "Sword demon." Li Jing. Looking at Aokiji, Li Jing withdrew his sword and spoke coldly, "What you just did made me very angry." "Thank you, Li Jing." Cold sweat broke out on Timo's face under the mask. He was sure that Aokiji had not noticed his invisible self from the beginning to the end. The reason is that the moment he pulled the trigger, this guy reacted and found his position immediately. As expected of General Marine, what the captain usually says is right. These guys should not be underestimated. Fortunately, the residents of Magic Valley Town were dispersed in advance. As for these pirates, forget it. After a moment of silence, Aokiji took a deep breath, and then slowly raised his hands. As he moved, the surrounding air seemed to condense, and a powerful cold air radiated from his body. "Oh, Ice Age," Aokiji shouted softly. His voice was not loud, but it carried an irresistible majesty. In an instant, the entire world seemed to be frozen. The originally peaceful Mogu town instantly turned into an ice field, and the houses turned into ice sculptures. The cold wind howled by, blowing the corners of Aokiji's clothes and hair. He stood there quietly, staring at everything in front of him with cold eyes. At this moment, the range of Ice Age abilities swept towards Tren at an alarming speed, but Tren showed no fear, and even raised the corners of his mouth slightly. Just when that powerful ability was about to touch Tren, Big Wolf appeared in front of him like lightning. I saw his left hand raised high, the dark energy of the dark source gathered in the palm of his hand like a tide, and then he smashed it to the ground with great force. Darkness can spread. In an instant, a dark force surged out and confronted Aokiji's Ice Age, forming a fierce confrontation. These two forces collided and offset each other, and finally succeeded in blocking the Ice Age ability from the outside. Shadow Wolf King, is he an Esper of the Fantasy Beast system? Aokiji knows very little about Big Grey Wolf. He only knows that this guy defeated CP9, but CP9 also severely injured him. Thinking of this, Aokiji subconsciously underestimated the enemy. At this time, it is a typical case of forging records to harm teammates. You can't stop me. Aokiji looked at Grey Wolf with a contemptuous smile on his lips, leaned forward slightly, and then disappeared instantly like a ghost. It's pretty fast. Grey Wolf was shocked. He didn't expect Aokiji to be so fast, but he didn't think much about it. However, Aokiji's strength obviously exceeded Big Wolf's expectations. Almost at the same moment, Aokiji's figure appeared again, and he was only a stone's throw away from Big Wolf. An icy aura condensed in his hand, forming a huge ice cone, and thrust towards Big Grey Wolf with a fierce momentum. Violent pheasant mouth. With Aokiji's roar, the ice cone shot out like lightning, freezing the air into ice crystals wherever it passed. Facing such a ferocious attack, Big Wolf's eyes were extremely calm, and he didn't even make any dodge movements. His body suddenly emitted a dark green source. The next moment, Grey Wolf teleported behind Aokiji at an unimaginable speed, with a strange red light flashing in his eyes. It's fast, but, Big Wolf's voice was full of disdain, that pleasant goat guy is much faster than you. When, Aokiji was instantly covered in armor. At the same time, Big Wolf showed no weakness and punched out with unparalleled power. However, Aokiji doesn't just use armament hockey, he even uses elemental abilities to offset damage. When Aokiji's body came into contact with Grey Wolf's fist, he suddenly turned into a pile of ice and then quickly fell not far away. Immediately afterwards, he returned to his original form at an extremely fast speed. General Marine is like this in front of me. Grey Wolf raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing an evil smile. The normal Shadow King makes him full of arrogance and pride, as if he doesn't take Aokiji seriously at all. Seeing Grey Wolf's contemptuous expression and Aokiji falling not far away, Tren's expression became serious. Something's wrong. Tren knows that Aokiji's strength is much more than that. Tren can be said to be very clear about Aokiji's true combat power. But the battle scene just made him feel very confused, unless. Tren's expression changed, and he seemed to understand something. He raised his head and looked at Big Wolf. Don't underestimate the enemy. This guy just didn't use his full strength at all. Huh. Big Wolf frowned. He's testing us. Chapter 60. What? Uncle Wolf is still working hard. Advertise here. As expected of the Frost Sword Tren with a bounty of 1.4 billion. Aokiji raised his eyes to look at Tren, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes, and then looked around at the other adventure group members present, with the corners of his mouth raised slightly. Originally, I wanted to see your freezing ability, but now it seems that I have to deal with them first. Before he finished speaking, Aokiji suddenly exhaled a burst of cold air, and the surrounding air seemed to be frozen. Freezing moment. With his soft drink, the entire space became extremely cold. Buzz. Almost at the same moment, Grey Wolf's left foot suddenly formed a thick layer of ice, and his whole body was frozen in place, unable to move. When, there was no movement at all. Big Grey Wolf couldn't help but was shocked. He didn't realize how Aokiji made his move at all. However, before he could react, Aokiji teleported in front of him, flew up and kicked him hard. Bang! The Big Wolf flew out like a cannonball and slammed into an ice sculpture house not far away, making a loud noise. Ice cubes flew everywhere, and the whole scene became chaotic. Aokiji, on the other hand, stood quietly, looking at everything in front of him with cold eyes, and pretended to be the first one. Big Wolf. Li Jing couldn't help shouting, but then he suddenly realized that something was wrong, and without hesitation, he used his special skill, 100% empty-handed catch, and defined all Aokiji's actions as attacks. A crisp sound was heard, crack, click. Then, the space around Li Jing began to freeze, forming a circular ice circle. However, this is no ordinary ice circle, but a manifestation of Aokiji's powerful fruit ability. But Aokiji's fruit ability is completely useless in the face of the rules. Faced with this situation, Aokiji's expression became extremely solemn, so he instantly changed his attack target and turned his attention to Tren. No, Li Jing naturally saw through Aokiji's intention. He flashed and moved in front of Tren as quickly as lightning, blocking Aokiji's attack again. At the same time, a huge ice ball appeared around the two of them again. Sure enough, you are the toughest guy. Seeing Li Jing successfully resisting his own ability again, Aokiji no longer dared to look down upon this swordsman. No wonder he was rated as a scary guy by Mr. Garp. On the other side, looking at the sudden ice in front of him, a thought flashed through Tren's mind: the fruit awakens. Immediately afterwards, he turned to look at Li Jing, and was about to let Li Jing and Big Wolf cooperate with each other. After all, Li Jing had absolute defense, while Big Wolf had absolutely high attack power. However, before he finished speaking, there was a sudden loud noise not far away, accompanied by thick smoke and fire rising into the sky. Tren took a closer look and was surprised to find that Big Grey Wolf was slowly floating out of the ruins. His eyes were full of strong murderous intent towards Aokiji, as if he wanted to cut him into pieces. Upon seeing this, Li Jing was about to ask, but Big Wolf turned his head slightly and said firmly, "Li Jing, protect the leader." Then, his eyes were locked on Aokiji again, revealing a sense of determination. "As for this green chicken, I will kill him now." Big Wolf's voice was cold with a hint of disdain, and the weather cube in his arm slowly started to move. Aokiji. What is a green chicken? Big Wolf. Tren tried to dissuade him, but Big Wolf waved his hand, interrupting his words. Captain Tren, I know what you want to say. Big Gray Wolf smiled slightly, and then his expression became serious. However, if Li Jing and I are both present, we have to rely on you to take action personally to solve the problem. That king, I really have no face to stay in this group. I didn't expect you to be able to move. Aokiji looked at Li Jing, who was protecting Tren, and understood that he could not break through Li Jing's defense for a while, so he turned his attention back to Big Wolf. There is no other way. If you want to kill me, you still have to practice like a green chicken. Big Wolf sneered, and then the weather cube instantly decomposed. And he also transformed into the elemental controller form. Don't you like to play with the elements? I'm here to play with you until you have enough. As soon as he finished speaking, the 6 elemental elves of wind, rain, thunder, fire, lightning, and sun appeared one after another. What kind of devil fruit did this guy eat? Looking at Big Gray Wolf's crazy look, Aokiji already didn't want to fight. After all, it was just a mission he received during the holidays. Thunder flash. After saying that, Big Wolf, who had integrated the 6 elements into his body, flashed. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky and struck Aokiji directly, but Aokiji dodged it. 2-thorn spear. Melt fire. Flame. Big Gray Wolf raised his hands to fuse the 2 elements of fire and sun, instantly melting Aokiji's ice. But Aokiji's absolute zero is no joke. He also froze Big Wolf's attack with a flick of his left hand. Crack. Aokiji suddenly felt that he had stepped on something as soon as his back foot landed. It's over. There's another guy in trouble. Aokiji directly froze Teimo's mushroom trap. But at this moment of distraction, Big Gray Wolf once again found an opportunity, and a bolt of yellow lightning struck like a whip. Electric light. Bang. Bump. Aokiji jumped away to dodge again, but when he landed, there was another mushroom. As a result, Aokiji was frozen again, and then Big Wolf found the opportunity again, and the result was another round of output. After dozens of rounds of fighting like this, Aokiji now has a mental problem. He is now eager to find Teimo. But as long as Teimo doesn't show up and doesn't actively attack him, Aokiji won't be able to find anyone at all. Hey. Teimo looked at Aokiji looking around and silently planted the mushrooms again. Although he can't face powerful enemies like Li Jing and Big Wolf, he is very terrifying in the field he is good at. In particular, Teimo can completely calculate the enemy's foothold and place mushrooms in advance. Looking around, are you provoking me? Or do you think you are invincible? Gray Wolf's eyes became sharp, and his body gradually returned to normal, exuding a powerful aura. He clenched his hands tightly, and the dark source began to condense in his hands, forming 2 sharp blades. Shadow slash. Big Wolf suddenly waved his arms forward, with endless power and fierce momentum, and the 2 black rays of light shot out like lightning. Frozen capsule. Aokiji saw this scene and without any hesitation, he directly raised his hands to defend himself. However, at this moment, he suddenly noticed something strange. His fruit ability was actually torn apart by the power of the dark source, and the dark power struck straight at him like a raging wave. Bang! A loud noise came, and Aokiji was knocked away, with a trace of blood flowing out of the corner of his mouth. He looked at the injured Gray Wolf in front of him and couldn't help but frowned. Just now, was my fruit ability cancelled out? Or, disappeared? On the other side, Gray Wolf gasped and stood up, staring closely at Aokiji. Finally, I got you. Chapter 61 God-Killing Gun. Advertise here. For a moment, both sides of the battlefield fell into silence. Aokiji's eyes widened with disbelief on his face. He never thought that Big Gray Wolf could restrain himself by himself. As he exhaled a breath, Aokiji's injured shoulder was directly frozen, but he didn't seem to care about the injury, and said in a calm tone, it seems that the people above still underestimated your fighting strength. After finishing speaking, Aokiji raised his hand to wipe the blood seeping out of the corner of his mouth. At the same time, a trace of murderous intent appeared for the first time in his originally calm eyes. Really? Have they told you that you will be killed by this king here? Seeing Aokiji like this, Gray Wolf secretly condensed the dark source with his hands, and controlled these powers to spread from all around. You can't do it. Faced with Big Wolf's provocation, Aokiji just responded coldly, but the aura exuding from his body became increasingly cold and biting. Ice Age. Aokiji spread his hands, but compared to the previous full field range, he focused his abilities to a smaller area at this time. Come on. Let me see your full strength. Big Wolf raised both hands at the same time, and the dark source rose up like water from a waterfall. You are indeed strong, but you will be defeated. Aokiji is at full strength, and the ability of the frozen fruit has completely begun to affect the entire Demon Valley town. Big Wolf not only has to resist one side, but is surrounded by enemies from all sides. At the moment when the two were fighting, a shadow of a knife separated the two. Gray Wolf and Aokiji were stunned at the same time. I'm actually surprised that you can fight like this with Big Wolf. At this time, Tren's voice came. Captain. Big Wolf turned around and saw that Li Jing, who was guarding Tren at the beginning, had sheathed his sword and hugged him with a calm expression. Big Wolf, it's okay. The leader will take care of everything next. Li Jing looked at Big Wolf and smiled. That's right. Even Timo, who had been invisible, appeared. Jenny Tren. Aokiji exhaled a little cold air from his mouth. Are you ready to do it yourself? While I'm giving you some time to breathe, don't say that I bullied you later. What do you mean? Aokiji's eyes darkened slightly and he stared at Tren. Thank you. Let the leader handle it next. Tren ignored Aokiji, but walked to Big Wolf and patted him on the shoulder. If there is no Big Wolf, I can't be a gambling dog with peace of mind. Captain, I let you down. Big Grey Wolf glanced sideways at Tren, his eyes filled with self-blame. Tren looked at the injury on Big Wolf's left shoulder, his eyes sank slightly, and then smiled. Go down and let Li Jing bandage it for you. Yeah, seeing the concern in Tren's eyes, Big Wolf unconditionally believed in his captain and withdrew from the battlefield obediently. Oh, are you going to fight alone? I thought you were going to fight together. Aokiji turned half of his body into an elemental form and raised his left hand slightly. No need to go to such trouble. Tren waved his hand, while his left thumb was stuck in the scabbard of Gamble. But before I fight, I have a question. What's the problem? Did you call for backup? Lieutenant General Garp will be responsible for escorting you to Impel Down. Oh, is that so? Tren breathed a sigh of relief, and then his expression turned cold. Then you must support yourself until Garp comes to help you. Aokiji. You. Aokiji just spoke in confusion, wanting to ask something, but before he could finish speaking, a dazzling white light suddenly flashed through. This white light is extremely fast, like lightning, making it impossible for people to react. Immediately afterwards, there was only a muffled sound, and half of Aokiji's elemental body was directly chopped off. Quote exclamation mark quote. Aokiji's eyes widened with a look of disbelief on his face. Swastika. At this moment, Tren pulled out gambling abuse and pointed it at Aokiji. At the same time, his body also changed. His originally strong figure began to become slimmer. At the same time, a mysterious tattoo appeared at the corner of his eye and quickly spread to his entire face. With the appearance of tattoos, Terran's whole temperament has undergone earth-shaking changes. There was an invisible murderous intent exuding from his body, like an evil ghost from hell, which made people shudder. God's killing spear. Tren's deep voice sounded, carrying endless pressure and murderous intent. I saw a strange short blade in his hand, the tip of the knife flashing with cold light. Violent pheasant mouth. Feeling the cold murderous intent, Aokiji instantly moved above Terran. Unprovoked. The corner of Tren's mouth raised, looking sinister and sinister for a moment, and then the divine killing gun in his hand extended several meters in an instant, directly piercing Aokiji's violent mouth. Without him, the Zanpakuto of the divine killing spear has a short blade and looks like an assassination weapon, so this is his complete understanding. This is also your ability. Aokiji barely escaped and gasped, because Tren's attack just now was terrifying. He didn't even dare to use elementalization or weapon color to directly attack. As this weird, a sneer appeared at the corner of Tren's mouth, and the divine killing gun in his hand shone slightly with a cold light. Then he swung violently and slashed horizontally. The entire ice-sealed Demon Valley town seemed to be cut horizontally by an indestructible giant blade. The ice layers cracked and ice fragments flew everywhere. Ice. Aokiji's face changed drastically. Looking at the terrifying slash coming towards him, he had no choice but to use his best ability to try to freeze it. However, all this is in vain. Aokiji. Stay. Tren's figure disappeared instantly. The next moment, he had teleported to the side of Aokiji, and the divine killing spear in his hand stabbed out like lightning. Wherever the tip of the sword passed, the space seemed to be torn apart. First General Marine. Aokiji shouted, a look of determination flashed in his eyes. Immediately afterwards, he activated the ability of the frozen fruit with all his strength. The surrounding air instantly became bitingly cold, and countless ice crystals appeared out of thin air, trying to block Tren's attack. However, Tren's strength was too strong, and the god-killing spear in his hand easily pierced through the ice crystals layer by layer and stabbed towards Aokiji. Just as the divine killing spear was about to pierce Aokiji's chest and body, suddenly, a strong light burst out from Aokiji's body. Jenny Tren. 3 days later, Marine General Kuzan was rescued by Garp, who rushed over on an island not far from Gaia Island. After the battle, Aokiji's left hand was chopped off, and there was a hideous stab wound on his body extending from his right eye to his abdomen. This wound was almost fatal. It can be said that it is a miracle that he survived. P.S. There are these 3 summoning partners next. Please vote for who will appear. Ship Dr. Dabai. Musician. One of the 3 generals of Bikini Castle, Squidward, Xinjiang. Maid. Thor, dragon maid from the Kobayashi family. If you don't understand this Thor, you can check it out. It's also super strong. Exception. I worked overtime tonight, so it was a little slower, but it was still the 3rd update. Chapter 62 After the War. Advertise here. Although this battle did not bring substantial changes to the entire Gaia Island, the town of Magic Valley had been severely damaged and was almost beyond recognition. In other words, this seaside town has been separated from Gaia Island. At the same time, the world government took measures to block the news of Aokiji's defeat and prevent it from spreading. After all, the protagonist of this failure was not an ordinary lieutenant general or general candidate, but one of Marine's top combat capabilities. If this news leaks out, the situation will inevitably spiral out of control, far beyond what is currently controllable. All these are what the world government does not want to see. Marine Headquarters, Marineland. Aokiji closed his eyes tightly, his body was covered with medical tubes, and he lay quietly on the hospital bed as if he had lost his life. Beside the hospital bed, Pelusolino, who was also Marine General, sat quietly. His face was unusually dull, and his lips moved slightly from time to time. No one knew what General Kizaru was thinking at this moment. But one thing is certain, Tren and his group are now 100% on his white list. A few $100s a day, why are you working so hard? Kuzan. Kizaru finally complained softly. However, his voice did not attract anyone's attention, and a heavy and depressing atmosphere filled the room. Creak. At this moment, Warring States opened the door and walked in. He first glanced at Kizaru, and then focused his eyes on Kuzan on the bed. Upon seeing this, Kizaru briefly reported Aokiji's situation to Sengoku. Kuzan is fine, his physical condition is pretty good. In addition, I also went to the newspaper Bird. He would not send the news out, but I didn't think it would last long. After all, those guys were not good people. Quote. Warring States frowned even more tightly and sighed secretly in his heart. He originally thought it was just an ordinary mission, but he didn't expect it to turn into this. I didn't expect that those guys would be so powerful. Warring States muttered to himself, with a hint of helplessness in his voice. The world government has exerted tremendous pressure, and now Garp has to replace Aokiji and go to New World to take charge of related duties. However, I am afraid that Aokiji's situation cannot be kept secret for too long. If the outside world knows that General Marine has suffered such a serious injury, it will undoubtedly be a major blow to Marine's reputation. Warring States took a deep breath and tried to calm down. The most important thing now was to find a countermeasure and not let the situation continue to deteriorate. Porosalino. At this moment, Sengoku Fleet Admiral suddenly raised his eyes and stared at Kizaru in front of him with burning eyes, as if he wanted to ask about something important. However, just when Sengoku was about to continue speaking, Kizaru stood up without hesitation and stepped out his slender thighs. Tron Adventure Group is indeed very scary. Fleet Admiral Sama. Kizaru interrupted Sengoku's words, and then said, I'm sorry, I just suddenly remembered that Dr. Vegapunk still has some emergencies. Things are waiting for me to deal with, so I have to take the first step. Before he finished speaking, Kizaru quickly activated his Devil Fruit ability, instantly turning into a dazzling light and leaving as quickly as lightning. Looking at the figure disappearing like light, the corner of Sengoku Fleet Admiral's mouth could not help but tremble slightly, and he secretly sighed in his heart. I guess this guy Porosalino is most active only when he is receiving his salary. Quote. However, this also reflects from the side the difficulties and problems Marine is currently facing. The concept of absolute justice upheld by Akainu made Warring States Fleet Admiral feel a little dissatisfied because this kind of justice seemed too cold and ruthless and lacked the human touch it should have. As for Kizaru, well, let's not mention it. When this guy was still a lieutenant general, he was obviously very active, but after he became a general, he showed that he was at the end of his life, and even the Warring States period had to doubt his composition several times. As for Aokiji, Sengoku has always believed that he is the best candidate to take over his position, but after this battle, he is really worried that Aokiji may have psychological problems after he wakes up. Alas, Shuju Warring States let out a long sigh, as if this sigh had been held in his heart for a long time. How can this matter become more and more difficult? It is simply getting more troublesome day by day. Ah, he murmured to himself, seeming to feel helpless and tired about the predicament before him. Recalling the past days, when he, Garp and Xiaohei chased pirates on the sea, those times were full of excitement and adventure. The three of them fought side by side and cooperated with each other tacitly. No matter they faced powerful enemies or dangerous environments, they were able to face difficulties without fear. Although life at that time was full of danger, it also had endless fun. They chased the pirates and shuttled across the rough ocean. Every battle was a life and death battle. However, today's government affairs make him feel extremely troubled. Various problems and people come one after another, making him feel overwhelmed. Garp, you are still smart. At the same time, on the other side of Gaia Island, a unique castle is located on the seaside. The main body of the castle is white, the decoration is mainly pink and gold, and there is a dome similar to a candy house on the top, which is pink and yellow in color. The windows are round and neatly arranged. There is a larger arched door in the middle, decorated with a sunflower pattern above. There is a small tower with a spire on each side. The top of the tower is black and white stripes, with flags flying above. Just like a castle in a fairy tale, but unfortunately this seaside castle is only half of it. This is where Mont Blanc Kulik, a descendant of the big liar, Mont Blanc Nolando, lived 400 years ago. At this time, in this castle that was half gorgeous on the outside but simple on the inside, Kulik, who had a small chestnut hairstyle, said with a serious expression, I really don't know what you are talking about, soaring sea currents. Really? Tron, who was opposite Kulik, expressed disbelief. Don't worry, I'm not interested in the things you salvage from the sea. I hope you are interested. Kulik looked at himself tied to the pillar and felt powerless for the first time. Captain, instead of asking like this, why don't I go and have a look nearby? Grey Wolf, who was sitting on the chair, took the initiative to speak, with firmness in his voice. Tren looked at the thick bandages wrapped around Grey Wolf's body, and couldn't help but feel distressed in his heart. Aokiji's strength is still not low, at least the injuries on Grey Wolf's body have not healed yet, and this cold air is corroding Grey Wolf all the time. His body seemed to be frozen into ice. Stay well, the injury is not fully healed yet. Tren said softly, with a hint of unquestionable firmness in his tone. Chapter 63 The Fifth Partner. Advertise here. Chapter 63. The gentle mountain god will heal every one of her friends. But she also has an angry side, and cute dumplings are not something to eat. The fifth partner, the mountain god who heals everything, Tuanzi. This little injury is nothing to me. Big Grey Wolf shook his head, and then he wanted to get up, but stumbled and fell back on the armchair. Big Wolf, don't be so pushy. Li Jing took the initiative to put his hands on Big Wolf's shoulders, indicating that he would take good care of him. I didn't expect that the Marine General would counterattack so fiercely. Thinking of Aokiji's ability to explode before facing death threats, Timo now feels horrified. Supplement. In order to balance the combat power, the author will strengthen the top-level combat power of the pirates a little bit, but based on their personal abilities, not other bells and whistles. I didn't expect that the Grey Wolf would suddenly jump out to help me block it. Tren looked at the Grey Wolf and sighed. Captain, this is all my fault, you don't have to blame yourself. Big Wolf looked at Tren sighing and took the initiative to raise his chest and said. Are you still proud? I have a self-healing body and I will be frozen for a few days at most after being exposed to that blow, but what about you? Big Wolf. But you are also worried about me. After saying this, Tren walked up to Big Wolf, looked at the cold air on his chest, and frowned. My dark source has no ability to heal myself. Big Wolf smiled helplessly. We can't get rid of this coldness. Sadako also expressed her worries. Because the Black Pearl also stopped in front of Kulik's house at this time, Sadako also walked out. Looking at a few people, Tren slowly opened the system interface. Summon 110%, Indigo 10%, Lucci 35%, Aokiji 50%, Kulik 15%. It seems that the brushing is enough, and the progress is 110% again. Looking at Kulik's emotions in the system details, Tren nodded. But he has some hesitations. The most lacking thing in his current team is a doctor, but he is also worried about summoning other combat-type partners. Now in the Tren Group Adventure Group, except for the leader Tren, the members can be divided into neutralists, militants, and moderates. The neutralist faction now includes Li Jing, Sadako, and Timo. He has a relatively normal personality and will only fight when necessary. For example, Sadako is actually not weak, but she rarely takes the initiative. As for the militant faction, currently the only one who has the character of the Shadow Lord is Grey Wolf. The biggest problem is that they are extremely aggressive. Once a fight breaks out, it becomes crazy. Believe it or not, if Tren didn't control him, Big Wolf would really dare to rush to the Marine headquarters alone. However, what Tron needs most urgently at this stage is some moderate partners. These people should have their own main occupations that they focus on, and can use their professional abilities to contribute to the entire adventure group and complete the team's puzzle. They may be very powerful, but tend to use their professional skills more. Thinking of this, Tren took a deep breath and said, once a gambling dog looks forward to the cards in his hand, it is really an indescribable pain. Captain, this is. Big Wolf looked at Tren, who suddenly looked uncomfortable as he spoke, and was a little confused for a moment. Look at you. Li Jing was the first to speak, pointing at Big Grey Wolf and said, Captain Tren has been worried and anxious about your injury these days, which has led to poor blood flow, weak breath, and even constipation. Guilty. Actually, I can prepare some laxatives to relieve the symptoms. Timo said. I'm afraid this is not good. What if the diarrhea is too severe and the body collapses? Sadako didn't want to see her captain become weak. I didn't expect that this king would be so important in the leader's heart. The corners of Grey Wolf's eyes suddenly became moist. Big Wolf, I didn't expect you. Li Jing looked at him with relief. When this king recovers from his injury, he will also have constipation to repay the captain for his concern and care. Quote. It's not Brother Li, you can't pull out this sword. Timo immediately grabbed Li Jing. Timo, don't stop me, I will send this unfilial wolf away right now. Don't fight. Sadako also tried to persuade her, but her voice was so clear that no one paid attention. No one pays attention to me. Kulik pursed his lips. A few days ago, he was fishing for things from the bottom of the sea as usual, but as soon as he came out of the water, he came face to face with Tren's smiling face, and then he was tied up to refresh his mood. There was a commotion behind, but Tren didn't pay attention at all, but rubbed his hands frantically. Forget it, you have to draw whether you hit it or not, so come on. One shot will enter the soul. As soon as he finished speaking, Tren clicked the summon button without hesitation. Suddenly, the familiar magic circle appeared again, bright light shining on Tren, and at the same time, a figure slowly walked out. Name: Tuanzi, from the Haunted Bear. Ability: the god of White Bear Mountain who revives everything has powerful healing ability, and Dango can change his body size. Strength: mountain god form, angry, gentle. Dumpling. Tren's eyes widened, looking at the small white dumpling with purple antlers on its head and a small body in front of him in disbelief. For a moment, he didn't even realize what it was, and murmured to himself subconsciously. He said, "It's not like he's a human being." However, at this moment, the summoned group suddenly made a move that Tren did not expect. It first looked at Tren and looked happy, then the corners of its mouth slightly raised, revealing a cute smile. Immediately afterwards, like a cheerful little bear, it suddenly rushed towards Tren, adjusted its posture in midair, and crashed into Tren's arms accurately. Then, Tuanzi began to sniff and lick Tren's cheeks crazily. Faced with such enthusiastic Tuanzi, Tren was caught off guard and almost knocked to the ground by it. But soon, he smelled a fragrance emanating from the dumplings. The smell was like the quiet scent of Yamanaka, which made people feel relaxed and happy. The dumplings taste so delicious. Duanzi. At this time, Li Jing was the first to notice the dumplings on Tren's body. When did you come here? Proud. No, is this how the bear calls? Li Jing's expression changed after hearing this sound. Duanzi is a mountain god, not a bear. Timo walked over first and touched the furry Tuanzi. Long time no see. Dango. The same goes for Sadako. Although she is a ghost, she is also a female ghost, so she definitely likes cute things. Tuanzi saw everyone surrounding him so enthusiastically, and felt extremely warm and happy in his heart. However, he did not stay too long, but went straight to Big Big Wolf. I have to trouble you again, Tuanzi. Big Big Wolf looked at Tuanzi, with a trace of gratitude in his eyes, and said softly with the corner of his mouth slightly raised. Tuanzi seemed to understand what Big Grey Wolf said. It raised its head, stared at Big Big Wolf with its big clear and bright eyes, and then made a slight, sound to express its response. Immediately afterwards, the antlers on Tuanzi's head began to emit a weak energy fluctuation. This energy fluctuation spread quickly like ripples, covering Big Big Wolf's body. With the penetration of energy, Big Big Wolf's wounds gradually healed, and the pain gradually eased, feeling the healing power transmitted by Tuanzi. Chapter 64 I Can't Help It. Advertise here. Dango's healing ability can definitely be regarded as a miraculous existence in the pirate world. No matter how serious the injury is, as long as there is still breath left, she can almost bring people back from the edge of death. After a while, Tuanzi finally exhaled a breath of turbid air, and the purple antlers on his head no longer emitted any energy fluctuations. The Big Big Wolf on the side was also ecstatic. He subconsciously touched his chest, and the place that was originally seriously injured was now completely restored to its original state. It has to be dumplings. Feeling the surging power in his body, a hint of excitement flashed in Big Big Wolf's eyes. My king, Big Grey Wolf was about to say something, but suddenly found that the bandage on his body was very obstructive. So without saying a word, he stretched out his hand and tore off the bandage. As the bandage slipped off, all the original scars had healed, and there were no traces left. Big Big Wolf looked down at his intact body, his red pupils shining with confidence. The corners of his mouth were raised slightly, creating an arrogant smile. Marine headquarters, right, I'm here, my king. Big Grey Wolf held his head high and made no secret of his arrogance and domineering attitude. At this time, he seemed to have forgotten the previous pain, and had only one thought in his mind: revenge. Captain, you don't have to wait for me to eat tonight. After saying this, Big Grey Wolf immediately started to mechanize, and then launched the jet flight under its feet, preparing to take off. Don't eat shit. You leave, I'm going to prepare dinner alone. Tren just held a certain, bellicose, Grey Wolf element. With one hand. It's okay, I will mechanize my king directly, then plow half an acre of his land with full firepower and come back. Do you think I will believe you? Tren rolled his eyes helplessly. He didn't expect that the Grey Wolf with the character of the Shadow King is really completely different from the Grey Wolf. He can only be a wolf that was actively chosen by the Dark Source. Big Big Wolf, please bear with the calm for a while. Li Jing also put his hand on his hand, but other emotions were obvious in his eyes, as if he was saying, don't leave. I don't want to cook braised noodles or noodles again tonight. King Big Big Wolf, I want to eat grass cake tonight. Even Timo showed a different look, which was enough to prove. There is no limit to Tren's cooking skills. Forget it, I'll just endure it this time. It just so happened that Tuanzi came back today. Big Big Wolf watched Li Jing and Timo return to normal, and then snorted with a hint of arrogance. Duanzi, do you want to eat grass eggs? I will make them for you. Yeah, Tuanzi hummed in a low voice, smiling widely, and took the initiative to follow Big Big Wolf. Hey, don't tell me that there was a sense of contrast when Grey Wolf in the Shadow King state said such words. If there is another militant faction like Uchiha in the future, Teren can think of that scene. After Uchiha Tom's body, Susanoo pinched Kaido with one hand, and then said, you are not even half as good as Jerry. The Shadow King Big Wolf held his black beard in one hand, and then said, "Only the darkness of Pleasant Goat can rival me. And you, hee, are just a joke. I can't think about it anymore, this picture is so beautiful." Tren shook his head quickly. Kulik, who was still tied to the pillar at this time, looked at Tren shaking his head and couldn't help shouting, "Can you put me down?" Huh. Hearing Kulik's voice, Tren raised his eyes. "Oh, I almost forgot about you. I'm sorry, my sense of presence is too low." Kulik complained. He was such a big man hanging around here for a long time, and no one noticed. So, do you know the existence of the Golden Land, Sky Island? Because Tren had been asking him about the news about the soaring sea currents, Kulik guessed. The empty island, in Tren's mouth is the Golden Land in the mouth of his ancestor Mont Blanc Nolando. The land of gold. Taren looked at Kulik and smiled, jokingly, "Have you never doubted that your ancestor was really a big liar? Or maybe you, Kulik, have accomplished nothing, so you have to rely on finding the Golden Land that your ancestors talked about to achieve financial freedom." Quote. Faced with Taren's half-joking tone, Kulik pursed his lips, stared at Taren and said seriously, "My ancestors are not big liars. The Golden Land is real. Every time I salvage from the bottom of the sea in the past few years, I can prove many things." Speaking of this, Kulik hesitated for a moment, and then continued, "As for the other question, I admit that I have selfish desires, but these things are human beings." Looking at Kulik's eyes, Taren chuckled, "That's a good answer. Then can you tell me whether Sky Island is the land of gold?" Yeah, there was nothing to hide, so Tren answered Kulik's words directly. "So you have been looking for the so-called Sky Current because it is the key to finding the Sky Island. It may be the key to a certain group of people in the future, but not us." Tren waved his hand. "And you, I just want to experience the pure natural excitement. But if it doesn't happen, forget it." "Is this so?" Kulik muttered to himself, and then watched Tren leave, but no one untied him. That night, in order to celebrate the return of Tuanzi, everyone in Trent held a banquet on the Black Pearl. Unexpectedly, the dumplings looked small, but they actually ate a lot. That night, Big Wolf and Tren almost got into a fight in the ship's kitchen. At night, as the banquet ended, everyone went back to their respective rooms, and at this time, in Big Wolf's room. Big Grey Wolf tossed and turned on the bed but couldn't fall asleep. Finally he stood up. He first looked at the photo of a family of 3 on the bedside table, and then looked at Red Wolf's pan on the wall. No. Suddenly Big Wolf stood up, the pupils of his pure black eyes flashed red. The more you think about it, the angrier it becomes, the more you think about it when you step back, the more you lose. After saying that, Big Wolf quietly left alone that night. The next day, early in the morning, everyone got up and did their own things, and Tren also stretched and shook his head. "Where's Big Wolf? He's still sleeping. I don't know what he did last night." Li Jing, who was the first to get up, sat in a place with a tea set in front of him. "I must be too tired yesterday. I didn't expect that I ate so much dumplings, haha." Tren took the tea from Li Jing, then picked up today's newspaper and leaned on the chair. "I didn't expect it either." Li Jing smiled and nodded. "No, PFF'd." Before Tren finished speaking, a mouthful of tea squirted directly onto the unfolded newspaper. "What's wrong? I didn't cut the material, Captain." Li Jing looked confused when he saw this. "No. It's not about the tea." Tren wiped his mouth and stared at the headlines in the newspaper. "It's probably as follows. Shocked. Marine headquarters was attacked and the Lieutenant General died. Last night, the Marine headquarters was attacked by unknown pirates. Under the powerful firepower of the unknown pirates, Marine Lieutenant General Doberman died. Marine Giant Lieutenant General John Jan was seriously injured. Almost 3/10 of the buildings in Marineland were damaged. Several warships were destroyed, and the person involved escaped without any injuries. Because the situation happened suddenly that night, I only captured a small picture. In the picture is Marine Fando, and above the ruins is a guy who looks like a gray wolf. His hands are mechanized, and his arms display countless guns. He smiles arrogantly, just like Marco Polo in full swing, and turns his body crazily. And Lieutenant General Doberman didn't know if he was chopped in half, with only half of his body exposed. Giant Lieutenant General John fell heavily in the rubble. P.S. I have read every message you have, but what Shanyu wants to write is an adventure group, not a novel that ends with more than 100,000 words, so all kinds of puzzles in the adventure group must be included, so those with strong combat capabilities my partner has no choice but to appear a little later. After all, there are many big scenes later, and now it has less than 200,000 words. The exception is because Baymax only has modern treatment methods, so he excludes Chungshen Shen Danzi. He is a ship doctor and a pet. In addition, not every summoned strong man has the heart to fight, they have their own personalities. Some may like their own things, such as Squidward who will appear in the future. In line with his character, he is an extremely lazy guy who likes to play the flute. There is also General Marine, who cannot die now, because it only has more than 100,000 words. The story has not been laid out, and there are scenes such as the war on top that need them later, so everyone understands. Chapter 65 Marine chooses to swallow this breath. Advertise here. On the other side of Gaia Island, the Black Pearl was moored quietly on the sea. The early morning sunshine slowly shines on the deck of the ship through the thin clouds, illuminating every corner shrouded in darkness. On the observation deck, Timo yawned and looked a little listless. He was holding a simple dinner plate in his hand, but his eyes did not stay on the food, but stared at the sun rising slowly on the sea in the distance. The golden sunshine shines on the sea, making the waves sparkling and dreamlike. The breeze blew gently on Timo's face, bringing a cool feeling. In the restaurant, Tren sat at the dining table, eating breakfast and holding a newspaper in his hand, but his eyes were fixed on the big wolf opposite. There was a hint of ridicule in his tone. So, did you really go alone yesterday? And then after you had fun, you came back alone. After hearing this, Big Wolf raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a proud smile. Ah, you can say that I feel much more comfortable now. After saying that, he poured himself a glass of milk, and then poured another cup for the dumplings in a basin. Pot. When Tuanzi saw the food, he immediately ran over happily and lay on the table waiting. Seeing this, Tren hugged the soft dumpling directly, held her face and asked, Duanzi, did Big Wolf ask you to treat him secretly yesterday? Tuanzi blinked his cute big eyes, then shook his head, saying no. No need to ask, there is indeed something wrong with me not coming back. Big Wolf ate breakfast happily, seeming to be very satisfied with last night's experience. Taren looked at him, and the doubts in his heart gradually dissipated. He was not worried about any problems Big Wolf would bring, he was just simply curious. Since Big Wolf said everything was fine, there was no need to ask further. So, Tren put down the newspaper and said with a smile, forget it, it's fine. But if you take such a risky action next time, you have to tell me in advance. Big Wolf nodded and continued to enjoy the delicious breakfast. The dumplings were eating happily on the side, and the whole scene seemed particularly warm and harmonious. But it means that some people feel comfortable, while others feel uncomfortable. Marine Headquarters, Marineland. The sudden attack of the Big Wolf last night plunged this place into chaos. Due to the sudden incident, almost all the Marine Headquarters combat forces rushed back to deal with this sudden crisis. At the same time, the pirates in the New World were also keenly aware that this was not a good time to touch the marine minefield, so they all chose to remain silent and low-key. The whole world seemed to become extremely quiet at this moment. In the conference room, almost all Marine lieutenant generals and generals were present. Warring States Fleet Admiral's face was solemn. He slammed the table hard and his voice was deafening. How many years have it been? Since the Golden Lion incident more than 20 years ago, who else has the courage to attack Marineland alone? Not to mention that the Golden Lion was finally caught by us. But this guy left so swaggeringly and leisurely. Although there may be pressure from the top, the attack on Marine Fando is undoubtedly a blatant provocation and insult to Marine, like standing directly on Marine's desk and slapping them in the face. I'm going to kill him. Akainu slowly raised his eyes and stood up directly. This time he was really angry, because the dead Lieutenant General Birdman was his absolute supporter of justice. He was also the 5th middle school student who participated in Buster Call. One of the generals. Sakazuki. Sengoku looked at Akainu who was eager to try, and glared at him directly, don't you think it's chaotic enough? Once you leave, the Grand Line will definitely cause an uproar, and those guys from New World will be ready to make a move again. Can you rely on the lieutenant generals to suppress it? Looking at Sengoku's sharp eyes, Akainu stood there, hesitating, and finally sat down again with a gloomy face. These pirates should be eradicated to avoid future troubles. Watching Akainu sit down again, Sengoku sighed, and then explained everything about last night. Sakazuki is at the New World G3 base, responsible for deterring the 4 Emperors Big MOM who are trying to make a splash recently. Porcelino is on Egghead Island. Garp and Commander Suru went to the G5 base instead of Aokiji because Kaido had contact with Whitebeard again. I am in Mariajoy due to work, and Aokiji is still seriously injured, which means that the Marine headquarters did not have the strength to guard it last night. Except for Lieutenant General Birdman and John Jondot who returned to hand over mission intelligence. Damn pirates, this is a premeditated attack. A ghost spider wearing a helmet with 8 spider legs behind his back said angrily. To attack when almost all of our combat power has left the field, this is indeed a preparation. Huo Shaoshan also nodded. So now do we know who it is? Momosugi, standing behind Crane, frowned. Zhu Yuan, it's better to leave this matter to me. Jiaji Chado, who was ugly and short in stature, smiled and stared at Zhu Yuan. Young people are different. Kizaru looked at the 2 young people who were expected to become generals and smacked his lips. This is not what's happening now. Warring States said solemnly, and we currently have no way to dispatch combat forces to arrest him. What? As soon as Warring States said these words, everyone present could not help but be stunned. What does this mean? Akainu directly slapped the table and asked. The guy who attacked yesterday is the deputy of the Tren Adventure Group. The Shadow Wolf King. Sengoku sighed. After the battle in Aokiji Demon Valley Town and the incident with Malinfando. Big Wolf was redefined by Marine as a right-handed pirate. Tren Adventure Group. As soon as Warring States' words came out, many lieutenant generals turned off their fires. There was no other way, this was really not something they could deal with. You know, the General Aokiji is still awake. Apply for Buster Call. Hang them, just like Bullet did back then. A lieutenant general spoke, but no one echoed him. Even Akainu just had a sullen expression and said nothing. It was obvious that he understood the meaning. Marine could no longer lack combat power. Nowadays, without Aokiji, there is not enough allocation. The above meaning is to increase the bounty of the Tren Adventure Group. Sengoku said, and then there was no follow-up, which meant that Marine was ready to swallow this breath of anger. So the bounty of the Tren Adventure Group changed again. Leader Jenny Tron's bounty has been increased to 1.98 billion Baileys. The bounty of Deputy Group Li Jing has been increased to 1.32 billion Belly. Shadow Wolf King. Big Wolf has a bad attitude, so Marine proposed to increase his bounty to 1.5 billion Belly. Close black lens bracket. Sadako's bounty remains unchanged. Timo's bounty has been increased to 410 million Belly. Chapter 66 The Flying Black Pearl. Advertise here. Marine's actions were still very fast, and the bounty of Tren and his group quickly spread to the sea, and because of this move. It can be said that I can completely tell everyone who the culprit who attacked Marine headquarters last night was. New World Waters, on the Moby Dick. Whitebeard was currently staring at the bounty amount of Tren's group, and he felt a strong emotion in his heart. A new era has arrived. Marco stood aside with a faint smile on his face. These guys are really fierce. Even better than Ace back then. I'm sure he'll be able to step into the New World stage soon, Daddy. Quote. When Whitebeard heard Marco's words, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, but when he heard the name, Ace, his eyes became a little lonely. A few months ago, his beloved son Teach brutally murdered his other son, and Ace embarked on the path to pursue Teach without hesitation. Marco noticed Whitebeard's emotional change and quickly comforted him. Dad, you don't have to worry too much, Ace is very powerful. Ha 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 ha, Ace is indeed very strong. Whitebeard laughed boldly, but there was always an indescribable feeling of uneasiness deep in his heart. He knew Ace's strength should not be underestimated, but he still couldn't help but worry. Returning to Gaia Island, I saw the iconic Black Pearl moored quietly at the port, like a giant beast waiting to go out. The sails of the ship were roaring in the wind, which looked particularly spectacular. Everyone on the ship was doing their own thing, but except for Timo and Sadako, most of them were in a daze. For example, since Big Wolf finished upgrading the treasure ship, he likes to lie on the hammock he made when he has nothing to do. Not to mention Li Jing, a pack of Dahongpao can last you a whole day. The new dumplings were curious and ran around on the deck, but Sadako took control of them and now stayed with Sadako in the orchard. Looking at the creatures of his companions, Tren breathed a sigh of relief, then turned to stare at the little gangster of the ship elf. You should know the location of the Sky Island, right? Of course. I can't calculate the uncertain factors such as the sky currents, but I still have the location information of the empty island. Xiao He puffed up his chest and said proudly. It's best like this. Otherwise, you'll fly to the wrong place later, hee. Xiao He. Just as the Black Pearl sailed toward the sea below the Sky Island. Kulik trotted all the way to the port, his eyes fixed on this huge ship, and he couldn't help shouting, can you really find the Golden Land? Kulik's voice echoed in the sea breeze, attracting Tren's attention. It's this chestnut head. Looking at Kulik standing on the coast, Tren couldn't help but smile. So I took a step forward and came to the guardrail with steady and confident steps. Facing Kulik, he straightened his body and said in a clear voice, we are an adventure group. If you can't find it somewhere, there is no need to worry about it. Go back. I just thought of untying him today. He still has energy at this time. It seems that he really wants to restore the reputation of his ancestors. It's good to have dreams. Noisy to catch up on sleep. Other members of the group also echoed Tren's words, their voices intertwined. Kulik looked at Tren's group in front of him, and couldn't help but feel emotions in his heart. Although he still had doubts, perhaps, these people could really create a miracle and find the long-awaited Golden Land. If you find one, ring that bell. Bell. Hearing Kulik's last shout, Tren frowned, and then remembered that there was a large clock made of pure gold on the empty island. If Kulik hadn't said it, I would have forgotten it. It seems that we have to find a way to melt it. After all, it is pure gold. Then, following Tren's order, the Black Pearl slowly sailed away and headed towards the vast sea. Kulik looked at the Black Pearl moving away, breathed a heavy sigh of relief, and looked at the smile on his face. Tren and the others are an adventure group, so he will definitely ring that bell. I look forward to your bell ringing. Gaia Island, a sea area, where the Black Pearl, which had been traveling for a long time, stopped here. This is it, Captain. Xiao He said as he jumped up and down. Here, Tren looked up at the endless blue sky and squinted his eyes. Yes, after my accurate calculation, this is the best position. Xiao He said with his hands on his hips. Big Wolf. After receiving Xiao He's affirmation, Tren looked at Big Wolf. Let Xiao He start it directly. He is the ship elf, he has all the rights, I am just cooperating with the research. Big Wolf smiled and shook his head. HMPH carrot. Everyone said it with their hands on their hips, and the leader didn't continue to ask me. Xiao He sighed. Come on, how will I know if you don't tell me? Then Tren rubbed Xiao Hei's head with his fingers. Let's get started. Then everyone, get ready. Xiao Hei shouted at the top of his lungs, his voice echoing on the deck. Along with his shout, a huge holographic screen suddenly appeared in front of him, with various complex data and images flashing on it. Xiao Hei's fingers slid quickly across the screen, as if playing an exciting piano piece. At the same time, in the Black Pearl's loot storage point, the box storing the Piao Piao fruit began to slowly sink. Then, several energy conversion tubes and efficiency devices were quickly connected to each other, making a buzzing sound. The Piao Piao fruit in the box seemed to feel something and began to tremble slightly. At this time, the seawater at the bottom of the Black Pearl and around it seemed to have encountered strong air pressure, retreating in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the sea around the Black Pearl became empty, and the entire ship floated into the air. Are you ready, everyone? Please hurry up during the process. Xiao Hei stared at the start button on the screen, raising the corners of his mouth slightly, showing a confident smile. After hearing Xiao Hei's reminder, everyone started to act as if they were waking up from a dream, tightly grabbing the object closest to their side, for fear that they would be thrown out accidentally. All systems are up, up, up. And this, let's go. As Xiao Hei pressed the start button without hesitation, a deafening roar sounded in an instant, and the entire Black Pearl began to tremble violently. Immediately afterwards, a powerful thrust spurted out from the bottom of the ship, causing the huge sailing ship to shoot straight into the sky like an arrow from a string. In the blink of an eye, the Black Pearl passed through the thick clouds, like a shining meteor, piercing the sky and leaving a gorgeous wake. In contrast, although the Golden Lion can make objects take off vertically when using the Piao Piao fruit ability, the sense of stability is completely different from now. The Black Pearl was like a wild horse running wild, racing wildly. Not long after, a spectacular scene unfolded before everyone's eyes. A huge peninsula suddenly appeared above the clouds, as if being held up by soft white clouds, giving people a dreamlike feeling. This is Sky Island. Chapter 67 Sky Island. Advertise here. Tai Lun's eyes widened and he stared intently at the mysterious island in front of him that was lifted up by the clouds. He couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder in his heart. This was the first time in his life that he had witnessed such a wonderful sight. For him, a promising young man from the new era with great ambitions, the wonder of Sky Island undoubtedly brought unprecedented shock and impact. We're here. Xiao Hei heard Tren's exclamation and immediately reacted, immediately turning off the Black Pearl's fruit transformation ability. In an instant, the fluttering fruit that had been taken away quickly returned to its original position, and the Black Pearl seemed to have lost its gravity support and smashed straight into the White Sea, located at an altitude of 7,000 meters above the sea. There was a huge white wave like a cloud. Xiao Hei, who told you to turn off the float before the ship even landed? Tren, who finally managed to stabilize his body, shouted at Xiao Hei. Ah, people forget when they are in a hurry. Xiao Hei pouted and stood on the guardrail, twisting his small body around and turning with one foot behind him. Alas, O_O. Looking at the little black loon, he sighed helplessly. It turns out that the Sky Island is really in the sky. Li Jing looked at the island not far away with a thought on his face. There is indeed something. Big Gray Wolf hugged his shoulders and nodded. On the other side, Sadako, Timo and Tuanzi stood together, but Tuanzi stared motionlessly at the White Sea, like white clouds, as if he had discovered something interesting. Tuanzi, is there something? Timo asked curiously when he saw Tuanzi's strange behavior. Sadako smiled slightly and explained softly, Tuanzi may be curious about this magical sea of clouds. At this moment, a loud noise suddenly came. I saw a huge abstract creature suddenly burst out from the White Sea, and then slammed into the side of the Black Pearl, setting off a powerful wave that instantly swept the Black Pearl away. The number was pushed aside. No, there is such an animal in the cloud. Li Jing was so surprised that he couldn't open his mouth from ear to ear. The sea in the sky, that is also the sea. Tren stared dumbfounded at the huge thing that suddenly appeared in front of him, obviously frightened. However, what is surprising is that this creature in the White Sea does not seem to have the intention of attacking the Black Pearl. It just opened its eyes and glanced at the Black Pearl, then quickly dived back into the White Sea and disappeared without a trace. I thought it would attack us like a sea monster. I didn't expect it to go away on its own. Tren raised his eyebrows, with a look of joy on his face. With the departure of that creature, Baihai returned to calm again, as if nothing had happened. But the thrilling scene just now left everyone with lingering fears. Did you run away? Big Wolf, who was preparing for dinner in the evening, looked at the disappearing creature and smacked his lips with a look of regret on his face. Isn't this the real destination? At the same time, Xiao Hei, who was staying by Tren's side, was concentrating on updating the map in the data. Is there no way to plan a route? Seeing Xiao Hei's continuous operations, Tren finally couldn't help but ask. It's not that I can't plan a route. Xiao Hei replied, taking a deep breath, and a thin antenna grew out of his head, which looked quite funny. It's just that I'm still scanning this area. Wow, you actually have this kind of function. Tren stretched out his hand with a curious expression on his face and lightly touched the antenna on Xiao Hei's head. Hey, after all, I have been upgraded, so it is normal to have more functions. It's just that because the Sky Island was suspended high in the sky, I couldn't scan its specific location. Xiao He explained somewhat proudly. Great. Successful. Just as Xiao He was speaking, all the three-dimensional images of the Sky Island area were clearly displayed in front of them. Seeing this, Xiao He put away the antenna above his head with satisfaction and breathed a sigh of relief. Well, I see, the place we are in now is just the White Sea, it is not a true empty island. Judging from the map, there is the White Sea above us, and landing there will be considered our real landing. A Sky Island that big? Someone who had completely forgotten the plot frowned in confusion. It's not that big, right? Xiao He replied, and then drove the Black Pearl towards the route. Not long after the voyage, a magnificent building like half a star appeared in front of everyone. Set against a majestic backdrop of mist and icicles, the building stands out. The design of the entrance is unique, with a crown-like logo inlaid in the center and golden patterns on both sides, exuding a solemn atmosphere. The door is engraved with the eye-catching words, Heaven's Gate, which means, Gate of Heaven. Heaven's Gate, this name is really cool. Tren stared at the entrance door and nodded. Then, the Black Pearl sailed into it without hesitation. The moment the Black Pearl sailed into the Gate of Heaven, the ant who was responsible for guarding the gate couldn't help but widen her eyes and exclaimed, "What a luxurious ship. I haven't seen it in many years." Auntie's eyes were attracted by the Black Pearl, with envy and curiosity shining in her eyes. But as the Black Pearl slowly sailed in, the guard at the gate also understood that he should appear, so he jumped out directly at the gate. "I'm sorry, I need to do something to get up from here." This is. Auntie's voice involuntarily attracted Tren to look down the boat. He was surprised to see a man with purple hair on his head, wearing pink clothes, and a pair of small wings on his back. The short ant was looking up at them. The ant looked at the young man who stuck his head out and could tell at a glance that this guy was the captain, so she narrowed her eyes and said with a smile, "From here, there are two choices. Two roads. That's right, one is free, and the other costs money." The free one. Ant wanted to seduce Tren with the free way, but before she could finish her words, a heavy bag of money dropped down. "It's not easy for the elderly, I'll give it to you. No need to look for it." Tren clapped his hands, with a proud smile on his face. Respecting the old and loving the young is a traditional virtue of the Chinese nation. As a promising young man in the new era, he naturally will not be stingy with this little money. "No, you." The ant, who was covering her head, wanted to say something else, but Tren and his party had already paid. So she had no choice but to open a gate first, and then, a slide-like road appeared in front of everyone. Go. The White Sea and his ilk will take you up. I wish you good luck, you rude fellow, haha. Chapter 68 Li Jing knows the leader best. Advertise here. What is completely different from the free express shrimp boat transfer at the gate is that the paid road is actually composed of a bottom-up flowing water. Therefore, when the Black Pearl gradually approaches this current, it floats slowly upwards as if riding an escalator. However, what happened next was unexpected. The speed became faster and faster. A strong wind roared by, even blowing Tren's lips open. Damn, someone, help me. Tren raised his hand with difficulty and tried to grab the pole of the boat. But the strong wind was so strong that his movements looked more like he was enjoying the baptism of the strong wind. At this moment, Li Jing and several others were already squatting in the cabin, silently watching the captain, enjoying, on the deck. The leader is the leader, it's really extraordinary. If you were at my age, I probably wouldn't be able to bear it. Li Jing stroked his beard and said with emotion. I always feel that the leader seems to be asking for help from us. 2 versus 2. Big Wolf said while playing the cards in his hand. Nonsense. Big Wolf, that's Captain Tren. Li Jing curled his lips disdainfully. How can you doubt the leader? He wants us to stay where we are and ignore him. Really? 3 with 1. Timo also drew cards with his small hands, then raised his eyes and stared at Li Jing, with a trace of doubt and curiosity in his eyes. Of course, Li knows a little bit about lip reading. Li Jing said confidently, with a proud look on his face. Then what did the leader just say? Timo continued to ask, and the dumpling lying beside him also raised his head and stared at Li Jing curiously. Well, Li Jing narrowed his eyes slightly, as if recalling the scene he just saw. Captain Tren just said, it's so cool, this is the natural excitement, don't pay attention to me, so we just stay quiet. Li Jing, can you also lip read? Sadako tilted her head in surprise, her eyes shining with admiration. Li Jing smiled proudly and raised his chin proudly. Why don't you have too many talents? After all, I am also the deputy leader. Plus I am the person who knows the leader best in the group, haha. No, something is very wrong. Big Wolf was not convinced by Li Jing's explanation. He put down the cards in his hand and stared at Tren on the deck, his brows furrowed. The leader seems to be waving to me. Grey Wolf, you are worrying too much. Look how happy the leader is. He is dancing with joy. Li Jing smiled and patted Grey Wolf on the shoulder, trying to make him relax. The leader seems to be flying away. Timo suddenly opened his mouth wide and raised his finger in the direction of Tren in fear. Everyone looked in the direction he pointed, and saw that Tren's body seemed to have lost its balance, and was swaying as if it was about to fly into the sky at any time. Are you so happy that you fly? Well, I can probably understand this feeling. Li Jing touched the beard on his chin and said thoughtfully. No, the leader is gone. Bah, it was Captain Tren who flew out. Sadako exclaimed. Holy crap, is it necessary to have such an exciting time? Li Jing blinked, obviously stunned by this sudden scene. Bang! At this moment, Timo took out his hook launcher without hesitation and quickly shot 3 sharp hooks towards Tren. Since there was a favorable wind at this time, the 3-claw hook easily grasped Tren's waist. Immediately afterwards, Tren was like a flag, floating behind the Black Pearl, until the Black Pearl broke through the sky again and reached the mysterious, White Sea. Sky Island, Kingdom of God, Holy Land in the Sky, Beach. The Black Pearl that shot out of the sky was parked quietly on the shore, and everyone got off the boat and stepped into this real, Sky Island. Captain, are you okay? Sadako squatted beside Tren, who looked hopeless, lifted up her long hair, tilted her head and stared at Tren. Oh, it turns out that I am still the leader of the group. Tren laughed at himself, and then his life lost its color. Well, at this time, Tuanzi also came over and rubbed Tren. On the other side, among the 3 Li Jing who also got off the boat, Big Wolf had a smile on his face. Big Wolf, are you so happy? Li Jing looked at a certain wolf with a smile on his face. But Big Wolf ignored Li Jing and turned his head and imitated the tone. Ahem, I am the person who knows the leader best in the group. Haha. Timo couldn't help laughing. Timo, please keep your voice down. Vice Tuan Li is good at lip reading. Don't think he doesn't know you are wearing a mask. As that's so, wouldn't that be awesome? Tisk, you know that people don't have too much talent to take care of themselves, you know. Oh, that's enough for you too. Li Jing's face turned red when he saw these 2 guys singing along. Just as they were about to retort, the 3 of them seemed to notice something at the same time and cast their gazes towards the trees in front of the beach. Who is where? Noticing the strangeness of Li Jing and the other 3, Tren regained his color and looked up. There was also a Sasha sound coming from the bushes, and then a blonde girl wearing a pink top and carrying a basket came out. Like the Heaven's Gate ant, she has a pair of small white wings, but the girl has 2 more tentacle-like decorations on her head. My name is Cornish, I'm just picking up some shells here. Cornish explained nervously. No way, Tren and his gang still look scary in the eyes of others. In addition to Tren and Li Jing, there is a woman in white who exudes coldness all the time, a werewolf, a short raccoon, and a big white bear with long horns. Cornies, are you from Sky Island? Looking at Conus, Taren stepped forward and asked. Yeah, looking at Tren, who felt very gentle, Cornies also breathed a sigh of relief, and then replied, what about you? They look different from me, but a bit like the Sandia family, but they are different. Quote. We are from Shanghai, not Shandia, we are an adventure group. Tren waved his hand and said with a smile. Adventure group. When Cornies heard this, she covered her mouth with her hand. Is that the kind of animal that performs juggling? After Cornies finished speaking, she continued without giving Taren a chance to speak. Then are you equipped for performances? I see you have a lot of animals, including a werewolf who knows how to jump through fire hoops, and a dwarf raccoon. Big Wolf. A werewolf who jumps through fire hoops. Timo. Short raccoon. PFF'd. Ahem. Li Jing turned his face away to hide his blushing face. No, you're a guy with wings and tentacles, why are you calling me the king? A dark green source of darkness suddenly appeared on Grey Wolf's hand. Big Wolf did her. I'll help you. Timo also pointed out fiercely. Who is the dwarf raccoon? He, Timo, is an authentic Yordle. Chapter 69 Cornish. Advertise here. Calm down. Li Jing rushed forward and opened his arms to stop the 2 of them. Cornies looked at Big Wolf and Timo who were stopped by Li Jing with some surprise, and couldn't help but take a few steps back. Cornies, they are my adventure partners, not the kind of people you imagined. Taren looked at Cornies with a gentle smile on his face. However, those who don't know are not guilty. But if you talk nonsense next time, people will really die. Go and apologize to them. Okay. After hearing the second sentence, Cornies couldn't help but shudder. Looking at Tren's smiling face, an inexplicable fear surged in her heart. This man seems to have no mercy at all. He is also the focus of many suitors on Kongdao. Yes, I'm sorry. Cornice's voice trembled slightly, and she lowered her head facing Big Wolf and Timo. Seeing this, Taren raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and his tone became softer. Okay, this is the first time this person has met us, so there will inevitably be some misunderstandings. Immediately afterwards, he asked, can you take us to the town where you Sky Islanders live? We are not very familiar with it here. Well, of course. Cornish nodded and breathed a sigh of relief. The place where everyone lives is not far from here. Cornies turned around and pointed in the direction of the town on the Sky Island, and then led everyone forward. Along the way, Cornish briefly introduced some conditions on the empty island, and Taren and others also listened with interest. No wonder some people like to find a personal tour guide when traveling. The Holy Land in the sky is also divided into 3 levels. The top level is where the Golden Bell and the historical text are located. The next level is the island, God's Island, where Enel exists. As for the last level, it is where Cornies and other Sky Islanders live, which is the Sky Holy Kingdom. As they moved forward, they gradually approached the town on the empty island. Looking from a distance, you can see a bustling and lively scene with unique architectural style, busy streets and people living busy and orderly lives. There are also a variety of shops and facilities here, not much different from other towns on the sea. The moment you step into the town, what comes into view is the scene of people on the island busy cutting through the clouds. These cloud materials are one of the most commonly used resources on Sky Island. Looking at this scene, Li Jing couldn't help but marvel, they actually used clouds as materials. After all, this is an empty island, so of course we have to use the clouds. Tren agreed. Big Wolf also secretly looked at the house made of cloud materials, and murmured to himself, if you want to destroy a place like this, it should be easy. Behind the three of them, Tuanzi made her body huge, while Sadako and Timo sat safely on her back. Since Sadako has no sense of weight, it can be said that there is only a light Timo sitting on top. If they only rely on clouds as materials, how do they achieve other functions? Timo asked curiously. Rely on this. Cornish took out a shell from a basket full of shells and explained with a smile, we will store all the required energy in the shell and then use it. It can still be like this. Looking at the shell in Cornish's hand, Timo was amazed. He couldn't help but sigh, and then lowered his eyes slightly in thought. Of course, Bay technology is one of our most commonly used items. Cornish responded with a smile, gently put the ordinary shell in her hand back into the basket, and then carefully took out another shell that emitted a cyan light from her pocket. Immediately afterwards, a fresh breeze blew continuously from the shell. This is the shell containing wind energy. So, these shells can be picked up casually on the beach. Are there no other special material requirements? Of course. Cornish nodded affirmatively. It seems that this is a unique product of Sky Island. At this time, Big Wolf, who had been silently listening to the conversation between the two, thought to himself. With his quick thinking, he instantly guessed the reason. However, Timo had his own unique ideas. If he could collect some shells, a specialty of the island, and bring them back to the Black Pearl's laboratory. Let Big Wolf help research and improve it. Maybe the energy of Big Wolf, Tuanzi or Li Jing's sword energy can be stored in it. In that case, wouldn't Timo's attack methods become more diverse and powerful? This idea spread quickly in Timo's mind, and the more he thought about it, the more feasible the plan became. Cornies. Just as Conus enthusiastically introduced Sky Island to Tren and his party, a middle-aged man who was cutting clouds came over. Dad. Cornies looked at her father Paige and couldn't help but stepped forward. After the father and daughter said a few words, they introduced him to the Tren group she met on the beach. You are not from Sky Island. Paigea is an old man after all, so he has more or less heard the words of his father's generation. So when he saw the faces of Tren and Li Jing, he knew that they were not from Sky Island, nor from the Sandia clan. We came from below, which is what you call Qinghai. Tren looked at Paige and explained. Are you from Qinghai? Paigea sighed slightly. With a bad look in his eyes, he stepped directly over Tren and came to the front of Big Wolf. I've only heard it from my father and others before, but I didn't expect that you guys have evolved so uniquely, and now you've even scratched the surface. Looking at this guy who was doing something to him, Big Wolf gritted his teeth and said, Dad, it's not him. Conus quickly pulled her father back who had bad eyesight, and then bowed crazily and apologized to Big Wolf. I'm just telling you, how could it evolve so fast? Looking at Tren's standard Qinghai appearance, Paigea breathed a sigh of relief. This is also our first time to Sky Island. Tren said with a smile. Is this your first time? How about I take you to taste our delicious food? My work for the day has just ended. Paigea enthusiastically extended the invitation. If you can, thank you very much. Tren responded gratefully. It doesn't matter. When I get too old to walk, I can still brag about it to the younger generation. Tell me what kind of people you have met and what kind of things you have experienced, ha 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 ha. Paigea smiled heartily. Okay then. Tren accepted Paigea's invitation. Anyway, he had to taste some local delicacies when he arrived at Kongdao. This is one of the essences of the adventure group. However, our group members may have a little bit of appetite. It's okay, that's enough. Hearing Tren's worry, Paigea directly patted his chest. Are you kidding? How much can a few people eat? Chapter 70 Enel. Advertise here. Just when Tren and his party accepted the invitation and were preparing to go to Cornish's house, there was a magnificent hall on the second floor of the Sky Island. In the hall, a man who had no rules and was sitting casually on the main seat was looking at the photo of Tren and others in his hand. The corners of his mouth were raised slightly and he said softly. Are you from Qinghai? Yes, God. God's Island Divine Soldier Team, Divine Soldier Dashan swallowed. I saw that the man's ears were vertical to his chest, his head was wrapped in a white turban, and something like a thunder drum stood upright behind his back. His upper body was naked, and his lower body was wearing blue and wide bell-bottom pants of various colors. He was lazily reclining on a chair. Then they paid the entry fee, right? Enel grabbed the apple from the fruit bowl next to him and took a big bite. They paid. Dashan reported truthfully, but. Just say whatever you have to say, because God can hear everything. Enel shouted arrogantly. His heart network covered almost the entire Sky Island, so he could hear all sounds, as long as he wanted to. This ability, combined with the ability of the Thunder Fruit, can achieve precise strikes almost across the map. Just like if someone speaks ill of Enel, Enel will directly give him a judgment. It's them. They seem to be here to find gold. Dashan's mouth seemed to have been burned, and he said all the words in one breath. Gold. Hearing Dashan's words, Enel frowned. Yes, and they don't know what means, and now they have landed on the island of gods. You won't lie to me, will you? Enel took another bite of the apple, his expression still lazy. After all, if such a large group of people landed on my island, how could my heart network not be able to sense it? I don't dare to deceive you, God, because my subordinate Kamibe really saw them landing on the island. Dashan wiped his sweat. A group of Qinghai people who said they were looking for gold landed on the island of the gods. Enel, who could hear his voice while looking at the mountains, was very sure that the other party was not lying, but he calmed down slightly and found nothing on the island. Strange thoughts. Strange. Why, it's wrong. My heart network will not fail. Enel would rather suspect that this guard named Dashan deceived him than believe that the heart network will fail on Tren and his group. Enel's eyes became sharp. He stared at the mountain closely, and then slightly bent his fingers under the fearful face of the other party. Bang! In an instant, a thunder appeared out of thin air and struck the mountain directly. The heart network is one of his most trusted abilities, and it has never gone wrong. He is a god. If the heart network does not detect Tren and his gang, there are only two possibilities. Either Dashan is lying, or Dashan is lying. But this is really the case, because the setting of Enel's heart network is to hear anyone's voice, but are Tren's group humans. The leader is a gangster and a gambler, not to mention the deputy leader, Shileng, who made complaints and had his own narration. As for the other members, an adventure group can't find a single local person. Forget it. Enel sighed and decided to investigate it himself. He could not allow any factors that threatened his rule to exist. Enel slowly stood up, his powerful aura making the surrounding air tremble. People from Qinghai, I'm curious too. Enel said coldly, then turned into lightning and teleported away. On the other side, Tren and others had already left Kenneth's home. They came here to look for gold. Of course, there was definitely no reason why they almost killed their entire family. After all, their adventure group is famous for their small appetites. But according to the map provided by Xiao He, if you want to find the ruins containing gold, you must board the second-level island where Enel is, which is the only place on the Sky Island that has a complete ecosystem, God's Island. You must know that most of the Sky Island is made up of clouds, so Gaia Island, which was washed up on the other side by the sea currents, became a treasure trove of rare resources on the Sky Island. After all, there is land, trees and many other natural elements there. However, for Sky Islanders, it is almost impossible to land on the island of gods. After all, Enel's heart network still exists, and there are many fourth-tier priests guarding the island. But for Tren and his gang, these difficulties are just a fiction. Is it another group? Timo put away his sniper rifle, and then several strangely dressed people fell down from the tall branches around him. Timo didn't know how many people he killed along the way. Among them were the Sandia clan, the natives of Gaia Island, the 4 god-tier officials, and the divine soldiers. Anyway, as long as there is a guy who deliberately hides himself and observes Tren and his gang, Timo will take the initiative, plus he is staying on Tuanzi in an invisible state at this time. So no one knows how they died. I didn't expect that there are so many people in the jungle on this island. Tren sighed. I'll take care of them all, Captain. Timo revealed his figure and said. Thank you for your hard work. Tren smiled slightly. He was not the kind of guy who would be attacked by someone, then learn about that person's situation, and then decide to help that person. In one sentence, anyone who stops him from finding gold will die. Is the map provided by Xiao He really accurate? Li Jing looked at the holographic display on Big Wolf's hand and complained. It should be right, but we haven't arrived yet. Big Wolf closed the button on his palm and closed the hologram. Go this way next. Because this time all members of the Tren adventure group set out, so it was quite interesting along the way. As for the Black Pearl, Tren believed that Xiao He would find a safe place to stay. Just as Tren and his gang were walking towards the ruins, a figure flashed crazily on the island. Because he couldn't hear the voices of Tren and others, Enel couldn't locate him, so he had to teleport across a wide area to find the target person. Strange, that guy really lied to me. Enel once again thought of the mountain that was split into carbon. Just when he was confused, he suddenly saw the body of a priest subordinate under the branch he was stepping on. Seeing this, Enel instantly walked over to the corpse. The corpse's death state was obviously due to poisoning. And it was almost instantaneous, which meant that Enel had no chance to hear their voices. After seeing this, Enel discovered the corpses of the Sandia clan and the divine soldiers. Killing them regardless of the situation, interesting. Looking at these corpses, Enel was not thinking at first but excited, and even Mouth Kukuzu rose crazily. How long has it been since anyone dared to challenge God's reputation? It seems that this group of ignorant Qinghai people will have a lot of fun. Chapter 71 The game, Enel is looking forward to. Advertise here. Through careful observation and analysis of the location where the body was found, Enel easily deduced the true intentions of Tren's group. As Dashan initially revealed to him, their goal was indeed to seize the gold. Thinking of this, Enel took out the sound shell without hesitation and quickly contacted the 4 priests on the island of gods. From now on, you all must gather at the temple immediately. After saying this, Enel decisively said, put down the talking shell. Soon, 4 responses with different tones came from the teleportation berry, but Enel did not listen to these voices because he firmly believed that these 4 guys would never dare to disobey his orders. You must know that these 4 priests are the only 4 who survived when Enel destroyed his hometown of Beluga after obtaining the Thunder Fruit. After completing all the arrangements, Enel stood quietly on the branch, staring deeply in the direction of Tren's group, and then transformed into a bolt of lightning and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Next, we just have to wait for the characters in the game to appear. At the same time, on the Tren side, no one was ready to continue walking because it was getting late, so they planned to stay here for one night. Fortunately, there is Dango. Taren took off the baggage from the enlarged Dango, and then cooperated with Sadako to set up the overnight supplies such as tents and pots. Oh, as the things on her body were taken off, Tuanzi instantly shrunk her body into smaller size, and then ran around. It was obvious that she had been wanting to do this all the way. Tuanzi, don't run too far. Sadako reminded her as she sorted out her belongings. Yeah, Tuanzi nodded and winked at Sadako, indicating that he understood, and then continued to have fun. Sometimes I really doubt the ingredients of dumplings. Li Jing smacked his lips as he listened to the screams of dumplings. Before Tuanzi joined the group, she was the famous mountain god of Baishan Mountain. If she hadn't liked Captain Tren, she wouldn't have been able to join the adventure group. That's true. Alright, I'm the deputy captain who is not too busy with his art. Timo looked at Li Jing who was stroking his beard again, and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. You'd better go catch some meat with Big Wolf. You can't live with Timo, right? Li Jing's expression changed instantly and he stared at Timo. I don't dare. After all, you can lip read. Haha. Timo smiled and then held some dry branches to build a small pyramid for the fire. It's over. Li is so wise in his life. Li Jing sighed with emotion. Bang. At this time, Big Wolf came back carrying a creature similar to a pig or a bear. Let's eat this today. Big Wolf put down the huge beast and clapped his hands. I didn't expect that the creatures on the empty island are quite big. That's true. Li Jing walked up to this huge creature and looked at it. Li Jing has finished cutting it. Let's roast some meat and cook some broth later. Tren looked at Li Jing and said. No problem. After saying that, Li Jing took out his sword directly, and then several sword lights flashed. The huge beast brought back by Big Wolf was instantly separated from flesh and skin, perfectly divided. This skin is good. I'll look for a chance to change it. When the weather gets cold, everyone can wear an extra coat. After cutting it, Li Jing looked at the skin and chuckled. You can figure it out yourself. Tren, who had already roasted the meat, replied, then turned his eyes and shouted. Timo, don't look anymore, come back for dinner first. Okay, leader. After hearing Tren's words, Timo turned over and jumped directly from the tree, and now walked towards the fire with the dumplings who had finished their fun. At this time, in the center of the temporary camp, Tren, Li Jing, Wei Tailong, and Sadako were already sitting together, leaving only the 2 of them. Island of Gods, at the entrance of the temple. The 4 priests have already arrived here, but they all look at each other with disdain. Oh, it's not you who did something stupid again. Salide, who was round, wearing a straw hat and with red hair, looked at the man with a bald head and a yunbei sword on his waist. Light tone. You have brought trouble to the east. Salide, be yourself. Shira, who got off a bird and was dressed as a pilot, tugged on his mustache with his little hand. God's order has not yet been issued, it is better for you to be careful. Gedazi, who had a unique hairstyle, wore a purple suit and black gloves, said coldly. No wonder you are said to be God's most trusted priest, Gedazi. Own looked at Gedazi and sneered. It was obvious that the 4 priests under Enel were obviously not dealing with them, and they did not know how much they were fighting openly and secretly. If you continue to talk, I will stop you from talking. Just as the 4 people were talking about each other's faults, Enel's voice came from the temple. Sorry, God. The 4 of them knelt down at the same time. Their fear of Enel could not be erased, especially when they saw with their own eyes that Enel single-handedly destroyed their hometown Burka. Why don't you come in? Why don't you wait until I go out to invite you? In the temple, Enel sat cross-legged on a soft seat, his expression already a little unhappy. At this time, the 4 priests also hurriedly ran into the temple and knelt in front of Enel. God. The 4 shouted in unison. Looking at his 4 priests, Enel raised the half-eaten apple in his hand, took a bite and said. You guys have been very leisurely recently. No, we have been maintaining the peace of the island of gods and suppressing the resistance of the Sandia clan. There are also traces of the previous generation of gods, Ganfuer. The 4 of them were trembling with fear. They looked at Enel's slightly raised fingers and swallowed, for fear that this god would drop divine thunder if he was unhappy. Enel looked at his 4 priests, raised the corners of his mouth, and then cancelled the movement of his hands. The 4 of them suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. I came to you for something. Please give me your orders. You don't have to go back to your own territory from now on, just stay at the trial place where you were in charge. Enel said with a smile. Go back to the trial place in charge of us. After hearing this order, the four of them had doubtful looks on their faces. You must know that that place is just 4 levels set up by Enel when he was bored, for those residents who tried to land on the island of gods. Under normal circumstances, the 4 priests do not personally guard there, and more often than not, their respective subordinates are responsible. Now being suddenly asked to return, well, it's really puzzling. Perhaps sensing the doubts in the expressions of his 4 priests, Enel was in a particularly good mood today and explained, haha, because I discovered a group of interesting guys. And their destination will undoubtedly pass through the trial grounds. The corners of his mouth raised high, as if he couldn't wait to see what happened next. The 4 priests looked at each other with a look of helplessness in each other's eyes. Their God always seems to like to play some so-called games, and they often can only passively accept them. Although they were somewhat dissatisfied, they had no right to refuse and could only follow orders and go to their own trial place. Chapter 72 Props, Bond Combination. Advertise here. In the forest of the Island of Gods, it was quiet and peaceful after nightfall. Tren and his group had already laid down in their respective tents to rest, but the conditions inside the tents were different. Timo and Sadako clung to the dumplings, as if they couldn't resist the charm of the fragrant, soft and warm white dumplings. Originally, Tren wanted to come over and have a post to feel the warmth, but plans often fail to keep up with changes. Li Jing, can you please move over there a little bit? Tren pushed Li Jing helplessly, then turned around and saw the gray wolf sandwiched in the middle. His current situation reminds one of Liu Bei during the Three Kingdoms period. Tren sighed helplessly, sighing secretly in his heart. If I had a choice, I wouldn't want to do this. So Tren, who was not sleepy at all, simply lit up his extremely simple system interface. Summon 10% warehouse. Every time I look at it, I feel shabby. Looking at the 2 lonely buttons, Tren complained, then raised his hand and clicked warehouse. I still don't know what the gift from Tuanzi is that time. As Tren clicked out of the warehouse, he found 2 items lying quietly inside. There are 2 this time. Seeing this scene, Tren couldn't help but be happy, and then he checked. Bond combination. When you use summoning, you can use this item to summon combination partners for you. This may be 2 people or 3 people. Note, when using this item, the summoning progress needs to reach 150%. Close black lens bracket. Looking at the first prop, the corners of Tren's mouth rose crazily. If it hadn't been so late at night, he would have laughed out loud. Isn't the meaning of this thing that as long as you summon when your progress is 150%, you can get a combination of partners? This wave of profits is huge. The first one is like this, and the next one is even better. Just like that, Tren clicked on the introduction of the next item with joy. Beautiful coat. Have you ever looked forward to a piece of clothing that won't be damaged no matter how fierce the battle is? Then choose a handsome coat. Once you put on this coat, no matter how fierce the battle is, you will always be a clean and handsome boy. In addition, the color can be customized. Close black lens bracket. This thing, it's hard to judge. Tren pursed his lips as he looked at the coat, which was based on the same template as the marine trench coat, but with the word, just, changed to, beautiful. No, this must have a hidden effect. Suddenly, Terran's expression brightened, and he read the introduction of Pretty Boy's coat carefully again. It doesn't break no matter how intense the fight gets, and it keeps me clean. Does this mean that this piece of clothing can directly protect me from harm? Product after sales explanation. Please read the literal meaning of this item, and no self-guessing is allowed. Close black lens bracket. Looking at the long-lost system explanation, Tren sighed helplessly. The meaning of, clean handsome boy, could it be? I will be spotless and so will my soul. Product after sales explanation. Please read the literal introduction carefully. Close black lens bracket. Then, that means that it can't be damaged means that I can use him to defend against any attack. Thinking of this, Terran's expression lit up again. After sales explanation of the product. This is just an ordinary coat, it just won't break, so you won't be completely damaged in a fight, but you will still have to suffer the injuries you deserve. Tren, no, is the system using the after sales explanation to scold me? Looking at this sentence, Tren was stunned for a moment. But then the system became quiet again, and no text prompts appeared again. Forget it, I've already made money anyway, hee. Looking at the bond combination in the warehouse, Tren closed his eyes beautifully. The next day, Tren and others packed up and continued towards the ruins. I didn't expect that sleeping together on the same bed would make the captain so happy. Li Jing, who was following Tren, couldn't help but sigh when he looked at Tren, whose mouth had not been lowered since getting up in the morning. As expected, Captain Tren is a polite and virtuous corporal. Li is not with the wrong person. What are you mumbling about again? Big Wolf looked at Li Jing and frowned. He still remembers what happened to Li Jing when he got up early this morning. Because of this, his dream of peace and harmony for the 3 members of the Yoruichi family turned into a ghost. You don't understand. Li Jing smiled slightly, and then followed Tren's footsteps. They are really energetic. Timo, who was sitting on Tuanzi's back as usual, smiled, then turned to look at Sadako. I didn't expect you to sleep yesterday, Sadako-san. It's normal for Timo to be curious. After all, Sadako's characteristics dictate that she doesn't need sleep. I don't know why, maybe because of the dumplings. Sadako chuckled and touched the dumplings. Yeah, feeling Sadako's touch, Tuanzi moaned softly. In this way, after walking for a while, Tren and the others stopped because a huge building appeared not far in front of them. This building was like an extremely strong gate, blocking their way forward. On the top of this building, 4 big characters are engraved: bog, iron, ball, rope. These words are deeply embedded in the surface of the building, as if telling people that they represent 4 different trials. With the arrival of Tren's group, Enel had already been waiting here, and at this time he was already secretly observing Tren's group. Come on, let's see how the game starts. What will you choose? Enel happily took out an apple and was just about to bite it. As a result, with a loud noise, the apple fell from Enel's hand, his eyes protruded, his mouth opened wide, showing his teeth and tongue, and he looked very surprised. It turned out that Tron, who had walked to the entrance of the trial, had no intention of choosing 4 entrances, so Big Wolf transformed into Iron Man form and smashed the blocking building with one punch. The original entrance to the trial instantly turned into a pile of ruins, and Tren and his gang also jumped away. There is only one road, but there are 4 entrances. Grey Wolf looked at the flowing white sea water behind the entrance of the trial, felt speechless for a while, and then returned to normal. Open black lens bracket Enel 15% close black lens bracket. Are there any emotions behind Enel's mind? Looking at the sudden increase in progress, Tren couldn't help but be stunned. Didn't I find him yet? At the same time, on the other side, Enel gritted his teeth tightly, stared at Tren's group, and his voice was cold and full of anger. This group of Qinghai people who don't know the so-called, do they really not understand the rules? Forget it, no matter what, they will eventually step into it. At worst, I will gather all the people on the 4 roads on the same road. In this way, this game is still the same game, but the mode has changed, that's all. After saying these words, Enel picked up the sound shell without hesitation and started calling. Chapter 73 Enel is truly a god. Advertise here. At the same time, the 4 priests who were in their respective trial places also looked at a loss after receiving the news from Enel. In fact, these 4 trial sites are concentrated on a white sea river that runs through the entire island of gods, but each trial entrance allows people to quickly reach the designated location. However, if you choose to take the high road, it means you must pass 4 trials in a row. At this moment, Tren and his gang were doing just that. Taren and his party easily crossed the trial entrance and walked upstream along the river. After all, the ruins were right behind Enel's palace. We'll be there when we're almost at the end of the river. Big Grey Wolf glanced at the map in his hand again, then turned back and said. I'm already old, I didn't expect to have to hike. Li Jing complained, then pretended to touch his waist, and looked at Tuanzi from time to time. My deputy Captain Li, Tuanzi will not let you ride. Don't even think about it. Timo, who was sitting on top, instantly broke Li Jing's mind. Ahem. I eat 3 kilograms of meat a day, how could this happen? Li Jing cleared his throat and continued to follow Big Wolf. It's normal to be a little tired. After all, we've been climbing up. Tren said, looking at the flowing white sea river. As soon as Tren finished speaking, many white floating balls floated on the river. Before Tren could react, the ball exploded directly and sent out a powerful impact. Bang! The strong burst of air directly left a deep mark on the trunk of a big tree. Taren relied on his body instinct and hid sideways, but his posture was very strange now. It's not like this ball can burst out airflow. Tren turned back and exhaled. Are you from Qinghai? You look no different from us. At this time, Salide, whose belly was like a ball, wearing glasses and a yellow hat, stood on his surprise ball and slowly floated over, carrying a smile on his face. Who are you? Looking at this strange woman, Tren frowned, but he still saw from the small wings on her back that she was a Sky Islander. My name is Shadley, the chief priest of the ball trial. If you want to pass, you must pass me first. Shadley stood on his surprise ball and proudly introduced himself. At the same time, Enel, who was following along, also smiled when he saw Tren and his friends meeting Shadley. Shadley, one of the 4 priests of Sky Island, is in charge of the trial of the ball, with a survival rate of 10%, nicknamed the Great Enlightenment of the Forest. There are also shock shells hidden in her gloves, and the surprise balls are also very powerful, ball clouds hiding various weapons. So people from Qinghai, you should be playing guessing games. Enel looked around and saw several people from Tren gathered around and guessing punches frantically. Open black lens bracket Enel 5% close black lens bracket. Am I the first to be eliminated? Li Jing sighed. My luck is also bad. Big Wolf shook his head. In the end, Timo and Sadako guessed, and Sadako won. No, what are you doing? Shadley looked at Tren and his group, feeling that he was being slighted. Taren ignored this ball-like woman, but stared at Sadako and said, come on. No need. Sadako smiled slightly and waved her hand, we can just go over there. She is already dead. Backquote Omega. Tren couldn't help but was stunned, but then he thought that Sadako, who had not made a move for a long time, actually had the ability to reduce the dimensionality of the soldiers. So he just ignored Salide and walked forward. As expected of someone from Shanghai, he is really arrogant. Looking at this scene, Salide gritted his teeth and was about to take action. As a result, blood blackness suddenly spread in the eye sockets, and then the breathing began to become rapid, as if something was strangulating the neck. For a moment, the moment Tren stepped over Shadley's body, Shadley fell directly and feebly into the river below, and the ball clouds she controlled also exploded one after another. Shadley is dead. The whole battle lasted less than a minute, and Enel's scalp was numb from watching it. Especially when he heard very clearly just now, Shadley's fearful voice. Open black lens bracket Enel 10% close black lens bracket. No, it must have been due to other reasons just now. They will definitely not be able to get through to the next place where Getazi is guarding. Enel comforted himself. Getazi is the priest in charge of the trial of the swamp, with a survival rate of 50%. He possesses the wind spray shell and the cloud shell that can produce marsh clouds. Although a little weaker than Shadley, Getaz's ability is even more disgusting. Thinking of this, Enel quickly followed up again. As a result, as soon as I arrived at the swamp trial, I saw Getazi being slapped to death by a horned white bear. Open black lens bracket Enel 10% close black lens bracket. No, what the hell is this? Enel subconsciously wanted to raise his hand to cast judgment, but he took it back. No, they should have relied on others. It would be pointless if I took action. And the next Shura and Ohm will only be stronger. The two of them are incomparable to Chaudhry and Getazi. Tren stood aside and watched Tuanzi kill the person with one slap. He couldn't help but said, Timo, didn't you take action just now? I thought so too. Who knew that guy bumped into Tuanzi's palm? Timo sighed helplessly. Tuanzi walked to the river and washed his hands, as if the cockroach he had just killed was a cockroach. Just like this, Tren and his gang continued to move forward, but they didn't know who Shura, dressed as a pilot, was on the top of the tree, looking at them. Shadley and Getazi are indeed useless, they released them so quickly. Shura said and touched the 3-foot bird beside him. That is, a giant vulture with 3 colors. Haha, it seems Shura has set his sights on them. Enel, who was watching from God's perspective, could be said to be very relieved this time, so he habitually took out an apple. Shura is the priest in charge of the rope trial, with a survival rate of 3%, nicknamed Knight of the Sky. Riding a 3-foot-long bird, armed with Rebay and Shengyan, plus the fire spear, they killed an unknown number of people. This group of Qinghai people lost at least 2 or 3 friends this time. Quote. Just when Enel thought he had a chance to win this time, Shura also rode on the 3-foot bird. If I'm to blame, it's your bad luck. People from Qinghai. With the blessing of his mustache, Shura looked particularly wretched. Then he clenched his hand on the fire spear and cooperated with the 3-foot bird to sprint directly. Death. Before Shura's figure arrived, he saw a shadow-like blade swinging towards him. Then, as a man and a bird, he and his mount were split into 2, and he headed towards the not far away place. Falling in the forest. Big Wolf, why are you suddenly attacking? Li Jing, who had been following Big Wolf, shouted while stroking his long beard that was almost shaved off. It's nothing. It turns out that a bird seemed to be coming towards us just now. I wanted to see if we could have some extra food at night, but the body seemed to have fallen somewhere else. Big Wolf said helplessly. Open black lens bracket Enel 15% close black lens bracket. Dang, the bird is gone. Enel listened to Big Wolf's words and couldn't help but crush the unbitten apple with his palms. No, this is an accident. Enel is still comforting himself. Yes, Shura is too confident, which has always been his shortcoming, otherwise he would not let some guys have the opportunity to pass his trial, but Ohm is different. He is in charge of the Iron Trial, and his survival rate is almost 0. Nicknamed the Heaven Warlock, he has a holy sword in one hand and has superb swordsmanship, coupled with Yunbei who can spit out iron clouds. His holy sword is as light as a cloud, as hard as iron, can stretch and change shape freely. This must have been something no one in Qinghai has ever seen. Yes, Ohm can definitely do it. He was split in half. Open black lens bracket Enel 25% close black lens bracket. Seeing Ohm cut in half by Li Jing's sword, Enel's defense was completely broken. What kind of game is this? This is obviously hang dog speed pass. Hey, people from Qinghai. Enel flashed directly to the height of the building above Ohm's body, staring at Lun and others. Who are you? Li Jing took back his sword, then pointed at Ohm and said, I am counter-attacking in self-defense. He just made the first move. Enel. Open black lens bracket Enel 5% close black lens bracket. I am a god. The god of Sky Island. Enel introduced himself domineeringly, and with that contemptuous look in his eyes, he sounded a bit like a god. At this time, Tren completely ignored Enel's self-introduction, but looked at the summoning progress on the system and swallowed. Summon 95%, among them, Enel provides a full 85% of spiritual emotions in the shortest time. Holy shit, Enel, you are such a god. Chapter 74 Arrogant God. Advertise here. Island of Gods, Trial of Iron. Ohm's body lay quietly under a wall. The originally holy sword in his hand was broken into two pieces like his body. It is not difficult to imagine that in the last moment of his life, he tried his best to stop someone's attack, but the gap in strength between the two sides was too great. Above the building, a unique figure catches the eye. Enel, whose ears are vertical to his chest, wearing a white headscarf, shirtless, bell-bottom pants, and 3 magatama drums stuck behind him. At this time, he was holding a shining golden stick and looking down at the people of Tren with contemptuous eyes. Ah, I really can't hear your inner voice, how strange it is. Enel narrowed his eyes, raised the corners of his mouth slightly, and said with a half-smile. There was an indescribable confidence and arrogance in his tone. Suddenly, a small sound broke through the air. Timo took the lead and tried to launch a poison beacon at Enel. However, Enel had obviously noticed this move and elementalized part of his body in advance, easily dodging the blow. The poisonous mark flew straight back and was deeply embedded in the wall. Poison mark. Looking at the poison mark inserted on the wall behind him, the originally elemental part of Enel's neck gradually returned to its original state. It seems that the guy who died first was all your fault. Enel turned his eyes to Timo, with a glimmer of light in his eyes. At this time, Timo frowned, put down the sniper rifle in his hand, and secretly exclaimed, "This guy's perception is so strong." It was just a tentative attack, but the opponent saw through it in advance. In terms of perception, Enel indeed has extraordinary talents and abilities. His mental network ability is so powerful that it can even cover the entire island, and he can achieve this state without resorting to the power of devil fruit. In comparison, the perception range of the 4 priests is very limited, and can only cover a small area. So, Enel suddenly squatted down, raised his fingers slightly, and his eyes revealed a kind of majesty and confidence, as if he was a real god. Are you ready to accept God's punishment? You don't have the final say on punishment. Enel. At this moment, Tren also recovered from his emotion about the system's progress, raised his eyes and stared at Enel closely. Enel lowered his eyes slightly and quickly glanced at the expressions and attitudes of Tren and others. Just through this brief observation, he realized that the young man in front of him was the core leader of this group of people. Ha 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 ha. After a moment, Enel suddenly let out a burst of arrogant laughter. You dare to call God's name directly, Shanghai people are really interesting. Hearing this, Tren raised the corner of his mouth slightly and showed a faint smile. Does being a god on such a small empty island give you such a strong sense of accomplishment? Oh, Enel's smile suddenly froze. He turned his head and stared at Tren with cold eyes. He pointed at the golden stick in his hand and said sternly, I am originally a god. Along with his words, there was a loud noise in the sky, and a bolt of thunder pierced the sky and struck directly towards Tren. However, at this moment, Li Jing moved. Hearing a bang sound, Li Jing took a step forward and came to Tren in an instant. At the same time, the sword on his waist was unsheathed and he easily blocked the lightning. A person with the ability to control thunder. Li Jing saw through Enel's ability at a glance and muttered to himself. Tisk. Seeing that his attack was easily blocked, Enel smacked his lips involuntarily, with a trace of surprise and dissatisfaction on his face. Enel, you can be a god, but don't forget, you are still just a human being. Tren raised the corner of his mouth slightly, chuckled, and then suddenly pulled out the gamble. Obviously, he planned to try Enel's strength himself. Wei Tailong and Li Jing, who were on the side, saw that the leader was ready to take action personally, so they gave up the idea of intervening. Tren's figure flashed, and he rushed towards Enel with a few big steps, the gambling in his hand flashed with cold light. Enel, on the other hand, stood quietly, looking at Tren with cold eyes, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly, as if he was full of disdain for the mortal in front of him who dared to challenge the gods. Challenging God is nothing but a fool's errand. Enel's voice was not loud, but it carried an irresistible majesty. Just before he finished speaking, his body suddenly disappeared from the spot and appeared behind Tren in an instant. Immediately afterwards, Enel stretched out his right index finger, and a dazzling lightning wrapped around it. He nodded towards the back of Tren's head without hesitation and shouted softly, "Lightning strike." Enel is full of confidence, he believes that this blow will definitely cause Tren to suffer heavy damage. However, something unexpected happened. Just when the lightning was about to hit Tren, his head automatically tilted to one side, avoiding the fatal blow. Not only that, Tren lowered his head in the direction of tilting his head, and at the same time put his hands on the ground. His movements were as flexible as a hip-hop dance. Then, his legs swept towards Enel's face like a whirlwind. Bang! The unprepared Enel was hit on the left side of the face by Tren's sudden kick, and his body stumbled back involuntarily. What kind of reaction is this? It can't be done by humans. Enel remembered Tren's actions just now and gritted his teeth. He even subconsciously suspected that Tren was also aware of the heart network, but Burka had been destroyed by himself. Apart from himself and the 4 priests, no one else had this ability. There's no way Burka has an orphan out there, right? Listen to what you say, then can I also be a god for fun? Enel. Looking at Enel with a footprint on the left side of his face, Tren couldn't help laughing, but he quickly stopped smiling and said open black lens bracket gamble close black lens bracket slowly put it into its sheath. Don't come here, Shanghai people. Enel was furious. The golden stick in his hand was filled with thunder and lightning, as if it was going to devour everything around him. Immediately afterwards, he flashed and appeared in front of Tren again like a ghost. At the same time, he shouted, 10 million volts. However, faced with such a fierce offensive, Tren remained unmoved. Instead, he gently pushed the hilt of gambling with his thumb, and in an instant, an unparalleled powerful momentum spurted out from him. Enel's face changed drastically when he felt this momentum. His body retreated uncontrollably, and at the same time, the attack in his hand stopped abruptly. Then, he quickly distanced himself from Tren with an extremely embarrassing backflip, and stared at the other person with wide eyes and a face full of shock. At this moment, Enel's heart was filled with fear and doubt. Because just now, when he tried to launch an attack, an unprecedented feeling came to his heart: he would die. To be more precise, the image of himself being killed before attacking Tren clearly appeared in his mind. Chapter 75, God's Confidence. Advertise here. Open black lens bracket Enel 10% close black lens bracket. You are indeed the chosen worker. Enel. Seeing Enel frightened like this, Tren completely pulled out the gambler again. At the same time, when the blade was completely unsheathed, the creepy and terrifying aura also receded like a tide. Feeling the dissipation of the terrifying aura, Enel immediately regained his confidence, but he still had no intention of getting close to Tren. 60 million volts, Brontosaurus. Enel waved his left hand, and then a huge Brontosaurus made of thunder and lightning roared towards Tren. Tren firmly grasped the hilt of Gambling's sword, quickly stepped forward, and easily avoided the attack of the Brontosaurus. What pure dodge skills! Enel couldn't help but admire after witnessing Tren's skillful evasion of attacks. But, I'm a god. Enel waved the golden stick in his hand, summoning countless bolts of lightning in the blink of an eye, striking towards Tren like raindrops. Tren relied on his superb dodge ability to flexibly avoid these fatal attacks, and his figure shuttled between lightnings like a phantom. Gods don't use elements to transform. Tren suddenly appeared in front of Enel again. He held the sharp blade in his hand tightly, his eyes were like a torch, and he slashed forward. Only God would do this. Enel saw this and hurriedly raised the golden stick to try to resist the blow. However, he underestimated Tren's strength. Tren's gambling flashed with dazzling light, and every time he waved it, there was a sharp sound of breaking through the air. The battle entered a fierce stage, and the two figures intertwined over the iron trial building, forming a unique landscape. Lightning and sword light intertwined together to form a magnificent picture. Tren's dodge skills were like art. He avoided Enel's attacks every time, and coupled with his extremely precise counterattacks, Enel was unable to defend himself. At the same time, Enel was not to be outdone, and continuously released powerful thunder and lightning, trying to suppress Tren with absolute power. Thick bolts of lightning fell from the sky, illuminating the entire space. But Tren was not intimidated by this terrifying sight. Instead, he used his speed and flexibility to avoid it skillfully. Suddenly, Enel revealed a flaw, as if it was intentional, allowing Tren to seize the opportunity to slash at him. The moment Tren approached, Enel reacted quickly. He raised the golden stick in his hand high, and the stick rotated wildly in the air. At the same time, his hands were close to Tren. 5 million volts, 10 million volts, 20 million volts, 30 million volts. As Enel kept shouting the numbers, the thunder in his hands gradually intensified, as if to tear the entire space apart. Come. At this time, Enel was like a thunder god coming to the world. His eyes were full of confidence and majesty. The reason why I am called a god is because if there really is a god in this world, then that god must be I. Before he finished speaking, the lightning in Enel's hand suddenly erupted, forming a dazzling bolt of lightning that struck directly towards Tren. This powerful current was like a giant dragon, with the power to destroy the world and swallow up Tren instantly. Captain Tren. Looking at the electric light that flashed in almost everyone's eyes, Sadako's heart couldn't help but worry, and her face was full of worry. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Big Wolf looked at this scene calmly, as if he had expected it. You know, when we trained with Captain Tren on the ship, the attacks he faced were much more ferocious than now. Grey Wolf said lightly. Haha, after all, the leader's body is very abnormal. Li Jing also laughed, and the scene at that time appeared in his mind. Tren actually blocked a blow with 50% of Grey Wolf's strength. Although it was indeed a solid blow, most of the attack power was offset by the terrifying self-healing ability. As expected, Enel was still too confident. He thought he could easily defeat Tren with his own 3000 volts, but this was not the case. This could not defeat Tren at all. In the electric light, Tren suddenly raised his hand and grabbed Enel's face. Nani? Enel looked shocked. He stared at the man in the electric light and shouted in disbelief. How is this possible? You are not afraid of electricity. How could you not be afraid? It's just that the power of your electricity is too small. Tren replied coldly. As soon as he finished speaking, he held down Enel's face and smashed it hard. Bang! With a loud noise, the ground instantly shattered. Enel's nose was bleeding, and his forehead was broken, bleeding profusely. He looked extremely embarrassed, completely losing his previous arrogance. Whoops! As a sharp sound sounded, Enel instantly transformed into an element without hesitation, broke away from Tren's hand, quickly jumped to a nearby roof, and subconsciously covered his face with his hands. Damn it! Enel stared at the blood on his palms and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. So many years have passed since he got the thunder fruit, and now he saw himself bleeding again, and an indescribable emotion surged in his heart. Just when he was in a daze, Terran's voice came into his ears. Hey, you are not lamenting that you haven't shed blood for a long time, are you? Terran's words had a hint of ridicule. Open black lens bracket Enel 5% close black lens bracket. Enel suddenly raised his head, his eyes locked on Tren, and asked. You. How do you know what I am thinking? Do you really know the network? Facing Enel's question, Tren smiled slightly and explained. Haha, don't get me wrong, I don't have that kind of ability. It's just that you look like a fledgling, and it's really easy to guess your thoughts. In fact, just after defeating it, Terran was already more or less attracted to the thunder fruit. After all, this devil fruit is really powerful and Enel hasn't developed it to its extreme yet. But it's just a heartbeat. So far, Terran really hasn't thought about eating devil fruit because his ability is unique. The entire adventure group is unique. In the future, the group members and themselves will be independent from the pirate system. You guy. Seeing Tren's expression as if an adult was looking at a child, Enel felt that he had been despised as never before. He is a god. Does it mean that the person in front of you really doesn't know his identity? Or does it mean that the other person doesn't take him seriously at all? You must know that with his current strength, if he hits with all his strength, he can easily kill anyone present. Thinking of this, Enel felt a little more angry, but at the same time he also felt a little more confident. After all, as a god, he has his own pride and dignity, so how could he be easily underestimated by others? In addition, Enel is very confident. At least in terms of confidence as a god, he does have a god look.